Chapter 664. Fuck. Chen Hao was curious and wanted to see what the so-called high-class service was. He opened the first page and his eyes widened. He was so shocked that he almost threw the manual to the ground and cursed. This is the flying machine of the Alliance Center. It provides this kind of service? This is too exaggerated. Chen Hao could not believe what he saw. This fucking high-class service was a blatant, erotic service. Even though Chen Hao only saw the first page and did not read the contents and instructions, he was sure that this was the legendary service. Because the first page was a picture condensed by the white jade crystal. It was a young girl with a graceful figure and a pretty face. That alone was not enough to explain the problem. The most important thing was that the young girl in the picture was only wearing a thin veil. Her curvaceous body was faintly discernible. Her high breasts and the two obvious pink and tender bumps were visible. Then there was the lush black triangular jungle area. Although it was covered by the translucent veil, it was like looking at flowers in the fog. It was not clear, but it was definitely revealing. Moreover, the person who made the picture book obviously knew the psychology of men well. The revealing was just right. This was no doubt more tempting than being completely naked with no secrets to speak of. It was the essence of hugging the pipa and covering half of the face. Even Chen Hao, although he was shocked, his eyes were attracted by the picture. Naturally, he had the arousal that normal men would have. Even though the girl in the picture was not on the same level as Chen Shui and the other girls, phew. Luckily, I am a righteous and pure person. If not, I would not be able to resist the temptation. Fan Xiaomei? Chen Hao saw the name under the picture and was slightly stunned. He thought of the girl that he hugged just now. That girl is called Fan Xiaoqing. This is called Fan Xiaomei? Could it be? Thinking of this, Chen Hao quickly flipped to the second page. Sure enough, it was another picture of a beautiful woman. However, after Chen Hao saw that the name was Pan Xiaolan, he flipped to the third page, then the fourth page. Names that started with the word Fan Xiao kept appearing. Finally, when he reached the ninth page, Chen Hao stopped flipping through the pages. His gaze stopped on the girl's face in the picture. Fan Xiao, as expected. Chen Hao shook his head and said, "No wonder she didn't want me to stay in the best room. She was embarrassed to let me see." Thinking of how Fan Xiaoqing lowered her head with a red face, not even daring to look at him, and then thinking of how Fan Xiaoqing raised her head and gave him a weird look after he confirmed that he wanted the best room, Chen Hao didn't understand and didn't think too much about it, but now he understood how Fan Xiaoqing felt. To put it bluntly, although he and Fan Xiaoqing met by chance, it was obvious that his hug made Fan Xiaoqing treat him as an acquaintance. And now, what she was going to do was undoubtedly something that she didn't want any acquaintance to know. Fan Xiaoqing still has the body of Yuan Yin. This should be her first time doing it, right? Chen Hao shook his head again. It had to be said that even if they met by chance, they didn't have any feelings for each other. But seeing such a decent girl fall into his trap, Chen Hao still felt a little regretful. Although this kind of thing existed on Earth and in this world in his previous life, and it wasn't rare. But no matter in his previous life or this life, Chen Hao wouldn't enter such a place. In his previous life, many times when he wanted to vent, he would choose the target himself, and use huge benefits to exchange for it willingly. There were a total of 20 pages of pictures of beauties. Chen Hao wasn't in the mood to read the rest, so he directly flipped to the section with the explanation. After reading the explanation, Chen Hao frowned slightly. At the same time, he couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. The truth was a little different from what he imagined. These 20 girls didn't betray themselves willingly, but they were slaves against their will. If I didn't see it, then it's fine. But since I saw it, then I'll help her. After reading the explanation, Chen Hao closed the information and muttered to himself. A drop of water should be repaid with a spring of water. As for that girl, although there was no debt of gratitude between Chen Hao and her, but he rashly hugged her, so it was considered a good karma. If he didn't help, it wouldn't be in line with Chen Hao's character. Beep, beep, beep. Thinking of this, Chen Hao didn't hesitate anymore, and directly sent a stream of energy into the service call button. After a while, the heavenly immortal expert from earlier appeared in front of Chen Hao. Mister, have you seen it? Which one do you like? No matter if the others choose it or not, you can have priority. The middle-aged man said with a smile. Originally, he didn't have high hopes for Chen Hao. This was because when Chen Hao and the other cultivators entered the aircraft, he was already looking for a target. Even when he saw Chen Hao, he was extremely surprised. This was definitely a top genius that could be called a monster in the vast universe galaxy. Even if such a young disciple was purely venting, he wouldn't just casually look for an ordinary girl. As long as they were willing, there were many more excellent girls for them. Why would they lower their status? Therefore, when he received Chen Hao's paging, while he was surprised, he also directly mentioned the treatment that others wouldn't be able to enjoy. I like number 9 Fan Xiaoqing. I want to know, other than the service described in the explanation, is there any other way to redeem her? Redeem her? The middle-aged man was instantly surprised. Mister, I'm sorry. These 20 girls are all genius disciples that our fan family has been cultivating since young. Although they are slaves, they are not ordinary slaves. The cultivation treatment that they enjoy in the family is better than most of the direct descendants. They are also one of the future power reserves of the family. Redeeming her is out of the question. You can name any price you want. Mister, I'm really sorry. This isn't a matter of price. It's beyond my authority. The middle-aged man was very surprised. Fan Xiaoqing's information had already been detailed in the explanation. Whether it was her beauty or talent, she wasn't the most outstanding among the 20 girls. She could only be considered above average. However, this monstrous genius youth actually chose her. Not only did he choose her, he even wanted to redeem her. That, name any price, made him extremely tempted. However, he knew that these 20 girls, no matter what price, the family head would definitely not sell them. Is there no room for negotiation? You can report to your superiors and ask. You can name any price you want. I can guarantee that the price that I can afford will definitely allow you to cultivate dozens, or even hundreds of Fan Xiaoqing. This? I can ask, but I can't guarantee success. This matter can only be decided by the family head of the Fan family. If you want to contact him, it will take time. How long will it take? I'm not sure. It depends on whether the family head is in seclusion. Mister, can you let Fan Xiaoqing come over first? With your super talent, the service fee is only 1 million immortal essence crystals. If it takes too long, it will be hard to avoid being taken away by others. All right, let her come over. Give me an answer as soon as possible. All right. What Chen Hao didn't know was that the Heavenly Immortal Realm Master was just giving an excuse to save face for Chen Hao. Before he came, he had already received orders that no matter how high the price was, Fan Xiaoqing and the rest would not sell them. The main reason for providing services was to be able to dual cultivate with the top geniuses and obtain the special benefits that only geniuses could get. Of course, it wasn't as simple as just letting Fan Xiaoqing and the rest get the benefits. Just like how the Valley of Happiness was able to become one of the top sects on the Ying planet, their promiscuous cultivation method was disdained by many pure and honest cultivators, but it was undoubtedly an extremely perverted way of cultivation. Once they practiced dual cultivation, they could more or less obtain some of the others' special supernatural powers and special understanding of the heavenly Tao. Even the extremely difficult to improve comprehension could be stimulated. Although this promiscuous method was a little indirect, it still had a considerable effect. To put it bluntly, Fan Xiaoqing and the rest were just the mortal elixirs that the Fan family prepared for their genius disciples. The so-called mortal elixirs were slaves that were cultivated from a young age. There were both males and females. The more talented they were, the better the treatment they would receive. After stepping into the peak of the advanced stage of the immortal realm, it was time for them to start using the mortal elixir. The mortal elixirs who maintained their Yuanin and Yuanin bodies could usually be sold for a good price after their first Yin and Yang fusion. Just this income alone could basically make up for the cost of cultivating them. However, the first time was not something that anyone could buy. If one wanted to buy it, one had to be a genius cultivator. The more talented one was, the lower the cost. It could even be free. This was because the families that had the ability to cultivate mortal elixirs were basically powerful families that had reached the point where immortal essence crystals were just a bunch of numbers. What they really needed was the comprehension of the heavenly Tao, comprehension, and special supernatural powers that the mortal elixirs obtained from their genius disciples. Because of this, the more talented the buyer was, the lower the price. However, most of the mortal elixirs were women. The ratio of mortal elixirs to men was less than 1/10. This was an inevitable phenomenon in the world of male supremacy. After all, if a woman cultivated with the mortal elixir, it would be very difficult for men to accept her. For example, if the Fan family let the Fan Donglu use a male mortal elixir to cultivate, which genius disciple would want to be her cultivation partner? The Yuanyin body was very important in the eyes of any man if they were to be his cultivation partner. As for Fan Xiaoqing and the rest of the 20 girls, regardless of appearance or talent, they could only be considered average. To be exact, they were confined to the peak of the advanced stage of the immortal realm. At this time, it was time to use them. If they could meet a super genius who could benefit them greatly and help them break through to the earth immortal realm, then they could continue to cultivate according to their own methods. When they could no longer rely on themselves to break through, they would start to cultivate with other genius disciples again. Chapter 665. But they couldn't be sold like now, and they even had to pay for it, because they no longer had the body of primordial Yin. Only after countless times of dual cultivation, when they really obtained some of the skills and insights that the genius disciples in the family needed, would they be able to display their usefulness and become the dual cultivation partner of the genius disciples. After making the best use of everything, those who were lucky and strong would become the lowest class in the family, those who were poor would become the death warriors, and those who were miserable would become the cultivation partner of the lower class in the family. It could be said that the fate of the human Dan was even more miserable than that of a normal slave. Of course, there were also special circumstances. If the human Dan's talent became stronger and reached the level of heavenly immortal, then they would be able to escape the sea of suffering and become the upper class in the family. Unfortunately, this situation was very rare. "Hello, what service do you need?" "The lounge," a young cultivator said. The lounge was the cheapest service in the VIP area. In fact, it was just a slightly spacious seat. The only difference was that it was connected to the signal of the second world, and this was also the choice of 70% of the 300 cultivators who came in. "Oh please. I say, miss, you haven't returned me my wealth card." "But I'm sorry. Fan Xiaoqing quickly apologized and returned the wealth card to the cultivator. Ever since Chen Hao had moved into the best room, she had been distracted. The handsome young man who hugged her by accident, who didn't have the arrogance of a super genius, and who even apologized to her, had left an indelible impression on her. It wasn't that she wished for anything, and she didn't dare to wish for anything. Just by looking at the two girls who were 100 times more outstanding than her, she knew that she couldn't leave any mark in his heart. But that didn't mean that she couldn't fantasize, and couldn't turn that accidental encounter into a beautiful memory. And when they met again, he greeted her with a smile and even asked for her name, which made her feel an indescribable joy. However, Chen Hao chose the top-class room. What did it mean for such a genius young man to enter the top-class room? It meant that there would be information about her placed in front of Chen Hao. Even though Chen Hao didn't care about her at all, she didn't want the youth who had left her with an indelible impression and fantasy to find out that her lowly identity was dirty. That was why she plucked up the courage to suggest that Chen Hao stay in a normal room. Unfortunately, because of this, she secretly prayed that Chen Hao, who was full of righteousness, would not look at the information and find out that she was dirty. Not for anything else. He just hoped that even if he didn't leave an impression, he couldn't leave a dirty impression. This kind of subtle thinking could be said to be the only pure land in the hearts of people like her, the spiritual sustenance. Ordinary people simply could not understand their desire to look up to heaven from hell. They knew that there was no hope, but they would always give themselves a wisp of beautiful fantasy. Because this was their courage to live on and their spiritual sustenance. Just a moment ago, she received another message that pointed at her. What made her absent-minded was that it was actually him. At this moment, she was uneasy and thought of many things in an instant. There was the disappointment of being found out, but there was also the excitement of being pointed by Chen Hao. At the same time, there was also the disappointment of knowing that Chen Hao would point people. That made the perfect figure in her heart be tainted with flaws. However, there was also a kind of expectation. Perhaps he only pointed at her when he saw her? If she wasn't in it, he wouldn't know how to point at all? At the same time, she was also looking forward to his talent. He was only at the peak of the initial stage of the Earth's celestial stage, but he had a powerful aura that surpassed most of the geniuses at the peak of the later stage of the Earth's celestial stage. If she sold herself to him, then she believed that she could rely on the fusion of her soul and flesh to gain a great harvest. She could definitely step into the Earth's celestial stage easily. With what she gained, she could even cultivate and break through to the heaven celestial stage. If she could really do it, maybe she could, although it was still difficult, but the final outcome would definitely be a shocking change. This might be the turning point of her life, although her life was still under the control of the Fan family. Fan Xiaoqing, you can stop processing now. Come with me. Just as Fan Xiaoqing was still immersed in shock and complicated thoughts, the middle-aged man in the heaven's celestial stage appeared at the entrance of the VIP area and directly transmitted his voice to her. At this moment, there weren't many cultivators who were still processing the service. She should have stopped after it was completely over. However, the middle-aged man in the heaven's celestial stage asked her to stop in advance. It was enough to show how much he valued Chen Hao. For such a genius, not to mention the 1 million immortal core crystals that he quoted, as long as the other party frowned, he would immediately lower the price. He would even dare to make it free. Because of Chen Hao's talent, if he knew that there was such a genius here who had such a hobby, then the Fan family wouldn't have arranged for a human pill like Fan Xiaoqing's. Instead, it would have been a supreme human pill. Manager. Fan Xiaoqing anxiously came to the middle-aged man's side, bowed and said, "Follow me." Yes. Fan Xiaoqing wasn't immediately brought to Chen Hao's room. Instead, she was brought to a secret room by the old man. Fan Xiaoqing, this young man's talent, even in the entire vast universe galaxy, belongs to the top category. I only have one request for you. That is to unconditionally satisfy all of his requests. Do not reject. Make full use of this half a year and dual cultivate with him as much as possible. Do you understand? Understood. Fan Xiaoqing said with a red face. If she knew that this day would come, and that she couldn't change it or resist, she would have accepted her fate. No matter who it was, she couldn't reject. She could only listen to the arrangements. This was the mission that she had been taught since she was young, the mission of a human pill. And now, to be able to meet him twice, and to have a little bit of interaction with him, a youth that she could only dream of, was her first man. To her, this was definitely the perfect beginning. She didn't need the manager to tell her what to do. Also, if he asks about redeeming myself? Yes, I don't know what this young man sees in you. He actually wants to redeem your freedom. Unfortunately, the human dawn that the Fan family has nurtured have never been redeemed. With the Fan family's wealth, it is impossible for them to redeem the human dawn that they have spent so much effort on. This is impossible, you only need to say so. Alright, go. Yes, Dong. This? When the door was knocked, Chen Hao opened the door. Fan Xiaoqing lowered her head, her hands tightly clasped together, bowed and said, "Mr. Chen." "Hello, come and sit." Chen Hao pointed at the chair in front of him and said, "Xiaoqing doesn't dare." Fan Xiaoqing replied softly. She didn't dare to sit in front of Chen Hao. Trembling, she knelt beside Chen Hao, lowered her head, pursed her lips, and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Perhaps it was because of her nervousness, her chest was obviously moving up and down. Seeing Fan Xiaoqing like this, Chen Hao frowned slightly and said, "Fan Xiaoqing, don't misunderstand. You and I have met twice, it's fate." I saw this. Chen Hao pointed at the advanced service manual and said, "I want to help you. You are a slave of the Fan family. You should be able to redeem yourself, right?" "Mr. Chen." Fan Xiaoqing looked at Chen Hao, shook her head and said, "We are not normal slaves. Redeeming ourselves is impossible. No matter how advanced a slave is, there is a price, right? Can't I give you 100 times the price?" Chen Hao said, "This is not about the price. We were raised by the Fan family since we were young. Mr. Chen, I appreciate your kindness." Fan Xiaoqing paused and looked at Chen Hao, mustered up her courage and said, "If Mr. Chen really wants to save me, please take me." Chen Hao frowned and said, "What does Rendan mean?" Fan Xiaoqing knew that she had to face it. So, even though she was trembling, she explained to Chen Hao about Rendan and the reason why the Fan family would not let them redeem themselves. What made Chen Hao even more conflicted was that the only way he could help Fan Xiaoqing was to dual cultivate with her and let her get the most out of it. That was the only way for Fan Xiaoqing to have a glimmer of hope. Seeing that Chen Hao was frowning and not saying anything, Fan Xiaoqing finally understood that Chen Hao did not want to dual cultivate with her. He just wanted to redeem herself. After understanding this, Fan Xiaoqing felt that this was normal. Why would a genius like him do something like this? Even though she was a little disappointed, Chen Hao's image in her heart was once again perfect. "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Chen. My fate is like this. You don't have to worry about it. I don't want Mr. Chen to be criticized because of me." "Thank you." Fan Xiaoqing stood up and bowed to Chen Hao again. Then, she quietly walked to the door. "Go to the cultivation room first," Chen Hao suddenly said. "Mr. Chen, it's okay, there's no need to criticize me. I'll try again. If it really doesn't work, I'll dual cultivate with you," Chen Hao said with clear eyes. As he spoke, he waved his hand and sent Fan Xiaoqing, who still wanted to decline, into the cultivation room. Then, he activated the restriction from the outside. At the same time, he sent out another stream of energy to press the service button. As a man, it would be fine if he did not want to help her. But since he wanted to help her, he would help her and see it through. Dual cultivating with a girl that he had only met twice and who was not outstanding to him, even though it was a little awkward, it was much better than his previous life where it was purely an exchange of benefits. Plus, he was helping her and there would be no repercussions. What was so good about it? He was confident that he could redeem her. Chapter 666. Mr. Chen, what can I do for you? I haven't been able to contact the head of the family yet. A moment later, the middle-aged man appeared before Chen Hao once again. "I'm sorry, I didn't think this through. The Fan family is the #1 family in East Flow City. I want to redeem Fan Xiaoqing, but no matter how high the price is, I'm afraid you won't be interested in it. How about this? Just tell the head of the Fan family that 500,000 cubes of supreme-grade spirit spring is the most I can offer. If it's still not enough, then I'll just forget about it. To be honest, this Fan Xiaoqing is a very ordinary person even among the 20 people. Whether it's her looks or talent, she's nothing to me. The only reason I want her is because she looks exactly like my dead first love. This. The middle-aged man in the Heaven Immortal realm was shocked by Chen Hao's words. He was so shocked that he was speechless. 500,000 cubes of supreme-grade spirit spring. What kind of concept was that? If it was immortal vitality crystals, the Fan family could completely ignore it. However, supreme-grade spirit spring was in high demand in the entire cultivation world. Especially for a big family like the Fan family, they all had expert craftsmen. Supreme-grade spirit spring could be said to be the key to determining the number of supreme-grade spirit treasures and even divine instruments in a big family. Even if they could get 10,000 cubes at once, it would be a huge gain for the family, let alone 500,000 cubes. However, Chen Hao wanted to use 500,000 cubes of supreme-grade spirit spring to exchange for Fan Xiaoqing's ordinary elixir. When they heard this condition, the heavenly immortal could not help but wonder if there was something special about Fan Xiaoqing that they had missed out on. However, that was impossible. Fan Xiaoqing had been raised by the Fan family since she was young. There were no secrets to speak of, therefore. When Chen Hao said that she looked exactly like his dead first love, he immediately thought of Chen Hao as a lunatic who was obsessed with love. Only a lunatic like this would pay such a frightening price for a woman who did not benefit him at all. To be exact, it was only to relieve him of his loneliness. I'll wait for your news. But Mr. Chen, can you let me appraise the quality of your supreme-grade spirit spring? That way, when I report to the head of the family, it'll be easier for me to explain. Sure. Chen Hao directly brought out a top-grade spirit spring wrapped in genuine, and appeared in front of the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man frowned and pondered for a few minutes. Finally, he looked at Chen Hao and said, Mr. Chen, please wait. I'll try to contact the family head. If it doesn't work, I'll contact the higher-ups. It should be quick. Looks like there shouldn't be a problem, Chen Hao thought to himself. He should have known that such a large family would not be moved by his so-called price. In reality, even though immortal essence crystals were a common currency amongst the top clans, powers, and upper echelons of the cultivation world, not many people cared about it. That was merely a pile of numbers. It was not that they had so much wealth that they could not spend it all, but that celestial essence crystals were simply unable to buy the things that they wanted. However, his supreme-grade spirit spring was different. In the past 3 years, he had sold it several times. Each time, it was in small quantities, but the price had risen terrifyingly each time. This also made Chen Hao even more aware of how scarce supreme-grade spirit spring was in the cultivation world. This was also the reason why Chen Hao was extravagant and did not care how much he spent. He only wanted to enjoy the top-grade spirit spring. As his cultivation level increased, the amount of supreme-grade spirit spring would eventually become a vast ocean. In fact, if one wanted to obtain supreme-grade spirit spring, they basically had to exchange for dharma treasures and spiritual items of the heaven and earth of equivalent value. If they directly sold it for celestial essence crystals, unless it was a lucky, poor person who accidentally obtained supreme-grade spirit spring, no one would sell it for celestial essence crystals. Sure enough, in less than 10 minutes, the middle-aged heavenly immortal quickly came over. As Chen Hao expected, the other party agreed immediately. When Chen Hao handed over the storage ring with 500,000 cubic meters of supreme-grade spirit spring to the other party, the middle-aged heavenly immortal, who was obviously still in the second world, directly sent a message. At the same time, Fan Xiaoqing, who was hiding in the cultivation room and still feeling uneasy, suddenly screamed and widened her eyes in shock. Immediately, she cried tears of joy. Because the slave rune imprinted in the depths of her soul suddenly collapsed and disappeared. She, who had obtained the human core, had finally become a normal person who had obtained freedom. When a person was young and insensible, they could be carefree. However, as they grew up and came into contact with more and more people and things, they would understand themselves more and more. They would also understand that their fate was arranged by others and they could not resist it. No one could be carefree. He could only work hard for his slim chance of survival. Until now, what was her slim chance of survival? It was to offer her body of vital yin to a genius young man, and then rely on her own strength to break through to the earth immortal, heaven immortal. In fact, until now, her slim chance of survival no longer existed. However, what she did not expect was that she actually obtained freedom so easily just because of a young man that she had met twice. She knew that he must have paid a huge price to make the impossible redemption possible. Other than being grateful and touched, what else could she do? She had nothing to repay him with. She was even willing to be his slave. But she knew that no matter what she did, she would not be able to repay such a huge favor. Chen, Master, Ling. When Chen Hao opened the door of the cultivation room and entered, Fan Xiaoqing, who was crying tears of joy, knelt on the ground with a bang. Get up quickly. It's not a big deal. You don't have to be so courteous, and you can't call me master. Looks like the soul slave seal has been broken. From now on you are free. Chen Hao smiled and sent out a stream of energy to help Fan Xiaoqing up. No, master. After being helped up, Fan Xiaoqing knelt down again with a bang. I, Chen Hao, from now on, am willing to be your slave for all eternity. I will serve you, Master Chen Hao. Heaven is my witness. If I violate this contract, my soul will be destroyed, and I will never be able to reincarnate. Hiss. Every word was clear, but Fan Xiaoqing spoke at an astonishing speed. She even brought out her soul, and with her soul as a guide and the world as a witness, she signed a soul contract that left Chen Hao dumbfounded. Even Chen Hao could not stop her. Originally, when he helped her up and saw her kneel down again, he thought that this might be the only way for her to express her gratitude to him. Therefore, he did not stop her. Otherwise, he would not accept it and would make her feel uncomfortable. However, he did not expect. At this moment, even in the cultivation room of the aircraft, the world shook. Endless mysterious aura directly penetrated the aircraft and enveloped Fan Xiaoqing without any resistance. At the same time, a strand of soul aura fused into Chen Hao's forehead without allowing him to resist. But please don't break the contract. Otherwise, this servant can only repay you with my life. This servant knows that in Master's eyes, this servant is insignificant and can't be considered anything. However, this servant can only repay Master's kindness by doing this. Hiss. Hiss. Fan Xiaoqing pressed her hand on her head. The surging energy was swallowing and swallowing. If Chen Hao refused, it would immediately destroy her soul palace. The shocked Chen Hao looked at Fan Xiaoqing, who was kneeling on the ground and looking at him with determined eyes. He was speechless and had a headache. What was this? Master? I beg you, please take me in. Your talent is not bad. You can join a decent sect. Why do you have to do this? Master, I am now called Chen Xiaoqing. I just want to follow you. This is forcing me to. Chen Hao scratched his head. He did not know what to say. Sorry. If you want me to die, I will die now. Since things had reached this stage, this was Fan Xiaoqing's only choice. First, she had to repay Chen Hao's kindness. Although she had once again become Chen Hao's slave, theoretically speaking, she had also lost her freedom. However, voluntarily and being forced were two completely different things. How could someone who had spent so much to save her treat her the same way as the Fan family? Similarly, she, who had suddenly regained her freedom, was terrified. She felt that the world was so big, but there was nowhere for her to go. She did not know what to do in the future. Therefore, her thoughts were simple. She would serve Chen Hao like a cow or a horse. No matter how Chen Hao treated her, she was willing to do it. Master! Just as Chen Hao was feeling conflicted and depressed, the old god, who had become a taciturn gourd, suddenly spoke. This girl's potential is not only on the surface. You have picked up a treasure. What do you mean? The so-called mortal Dan are all nurtured from a young age. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't have any dissatisfaction towards their own fate. Instead, they would think that this is what they should do. This is their destiny, a destiny filled with glory and unparalleled glory. You mean she has been brainwashed? Yes. Although I have not seen other human Dan, but I can conclude that no one is like her. People who have been brainwashed from young can maintain their consciousness. However, no one can maintain their true consciousness like her. Because of this, they would have a conflict with their fate. Even if they wanted to fight back, they would not be able to do so. In her soul, she has always maintained a pure land, fighting against the fate of becoming a human Dan. This also caused her, who should have been a supreme-grade human Dan, to become a normal human Dan. Chen Hao was deep in thought. Old God's words were very clear. In other words, because this girl had always maintained her true consciousness, she had lost the pure state of mind to work hard for her goal. This was like the two sides of her soul fighting in her mind. This caused her talent, understanding, and determination to be severely suppressed. Chapter 667. If that was not the case, she would not be stuck at the peak of the later stage of the human celestial stage. The only explanation was that Fan Xiaoqing's soul and state of mind were extremely tough and strong. Otherwise, she would have been brainwashed successfully and lost her true consciousness. Now, she has regained her freedom and is willing to follow Master. The things that bound her heart have been removed, and her state of mind has undergone a metamorphosis. There is no doubt that she will be able to unleash a cultivation talent that is much stronger than before. I think, Master, you should. Old God paused slightly as if he was hesitating whether to say it or not. According to its principle, it would not interfere with any of Chen Hao's decisions. But now, Old God realized that Chen Hao's greatest strengths and weaknesses were all focused on love and women. They were the things that motivated him the most, but at the same time, they were the things that bound him the most. The reason was simple. From Chen Hao's point of view, from the moment his soul merged with his soul in his previous life, he no longer had the body of Yuanyang spiritually. And when he was forced to do it with Tantai Lien, he lost the body of Yuanyang spiritually and physically. In other words, no matter how hard Chen Hao tried to hold it in, the combination of yin and yang of the women would not have much effect on him. Unless it was someone like Longtime who had used the nirvana pill and relied on the medicinal properties of the nirvana pill to bring about a stronger fire of desire, then the effect would be greater. Don't be agitated. Let me think about it. Now, calm your mind and wait for me. Chen Hao communicated with Old God in his mind. At the same time, he looked at Fan Shaoqing and said. After that, he walked out of the cultivation room. What should I do? Chen Hao asked in his mind. It was not the first time that Chen Hao had seen Old God stuttering. Every time it happened, it meant that Old God had reached the end of his patience. Only then would he speak to remind him. Take her. Since I'm already involved in this, do you think I should just watch her die? It's just that it's a headache. Old God, to tell you the truth, I've found that women have a great influence on me. Many times things don't go as I wish, and they're all on the same side. Damn, it's really a headache? Chen Hao said in his mind. Master, you're overthinking things. To be exact, you can't let go when it comes to women. You're obviously moved, but you're afraid. You always have too many misgivings. If you could do as you please, then these problems would be trivial to you. Everyone knows the logic, but to really do that, I can't do it. You are naturally dissolute and have great luck with women. Fuck, I was born pure, okay? Since when have I ever been flirty? That's because you have too many misgivings, and it just so happens that you have a strong willpower. That's why you're in such a deformed state. Old God no longer had any misgivings and said mercilessly. Deformed state. Old God, can you watch your mouth? Furthermore, if you continue, it will only get worse. Until now, let me give you a rough estimate of how many women you'll have in the future. The first woman who made you fantasize was Xiao Mei of the Xiao family, right? After the soul purification, she still exists clearly in your heart, right? Back then, you had already accepted her in your heart, but because you didn't say it out loud and later on, when you saw Xiao Mei and Xiao Feng confirm their relationship, you suppressed these feelings. Am I right? Yes. I feel that I didn't do anything wrong. You gave up and didn't investigate the reason, but Xiao Mei still persisted, and even rushed out of the secular world. When you saw her again, you wanted to understand, but you suppressed it, right? Yes, this is one of the things that's bothering you. If I'm not wrong, you must have encountered something related to Xiao Mei in the illusion test in the second world. The reason why you did that was because you had Xia Yuyu, Helian Wuzi, and Tantai Lien. You had misgivings, right? Yes, Xia Yu was the first one who moved you easily. Helian Wuzi, you couldn't let go, and you struggled for a long time before you accepted her. Tantai Lien, you had no choice but to accept her, but the premise was that you had a heart. Then, Chen Shui, you were moved by her elegance, and coupled with the special relationship between you and your god-siblings, it could be said that they were a conduit, and gave you the biggest reason, and the only one that you didn't struggle with. Then, the Lung sisters, you struggled with many things, and you even created the identity of your god-grandfather. But later on, you couldn't let go, and you used the reason that they saved your life. As for Long Ting, what you need to convince yourself is that you feel like an old friend at first sight, her looks, and the help she gives you when you need it. Most importantly, she takes the initiative. These aren't big problems. Cough cough. Chen Hao was speechless at Old God's words. He had to admit that Old God, who had grown up with him, definitely knew him well. Every sentence could be said to be to the point, and he couldn't refute it even if he wanted to. Including your sister Xiao Yan, it wasn't a big problem, because you could find reasons to convince yourself and the other girls. Cough cough. My sister and I. Forget it, you can continue. To put it bluntly, there's a cause and there's an effect. Among any of them, let's not talk about whether you were merciful in the first place, because that's meaningless, but you were merciful either intentionally or unintentionally. This is what I meant when I said that you were naturally dissolute. Coupled with your charm and great luck with women, you have a fatal attraction to the opposite sex. This led to the current situation. Why don't you stop being merciful? If you do, you have to be prepared for trouble. Of course, the so-called trouble is under the premise that you can't do as you please. Take this girl for example. You just hugged her by accident, and maybe you didn't have any thoughts about it. But you, who are naturally dissolute, after meeting her again, you wanted to help her. That's why it's like this now. It does seem like things don't go as planned, as you said, but if you didn't have a naturally kind heart towards women, how could this situation have happened? Moreover, you also said that if you really can't redeem yourself, it doesn't matter even if you help her. You feel that way because deep down, you know that after you help her, she won't have anything to do with you, won't trouble, and won't have to face the other girls. But I can be sure that once you help her, you won't let another man taint her. In the future, you will definitely help her. Cough cough, let's talk about that Bailey Ning Bing. She does have a reason not to kill, and she doesn't deserve to die, but if it was a man, would you let her live? Would I? There's no reason to kill her. Even if it was a man. You just didn't want to kill her at all. Otherwise, even if there's no reason, you can still find a reason. You know it's impossible, but you can still do it. You've done such things many times. When it comes to men, you can kill decisively. When it comes to women, unless it's someone who really threatens your bottom line, you're kind-hearted, you'll always unconsciously exonerate them. Enough. Don't say any more, let me be alone. All right. Old God replied, and took the initiative to enter the depths of Chen Hao's mind. What he said today would undoubtedly have a huge impact on Chen Hao. Old God had wanted to say these words for a long time, but he held it in until now. This was because he underestimated Chen Hao's determination and stubbornness in love. Hiss! Chen Hao took a deep breath and calmed his fluctuating emotions. Chen Hao had already sensed that Old God had hit the nail on the head. To be exact, when he entered the second world for the test, he already knew. The illusory realm he encountered during that test had almost shaken his heart. It also made him understand that one day he would have to face it. He had always been searching for a solution, but he had never been able to do so, but now, Old God didn't hold back in the slightest. He knew that Old God was right, and he should have done so, but it just so happened that, at this moment, Chen Hao's mind once again flashed with various scenes of the past. Every woman, every detail, appeared in his mind like a movie. He comprehended, pondered, searched, immersed himself in it. Gradually, the various scenes he encountered in the illusion automatically appeared in Chen Hao's mind. The combination of reality and illusion caused Chen Hao to be unable to extricate himself once more. 1,000 enormous flying machines in the chaotic space were arranged in 3 lines, forming a majestic flying machine army. At the very front, in the East Flow City's number 1 flying machine, which was 3 times larger than an ordinary flying machine, Longtime and Chen Shui were in a separate sealed space. Ha! Little Shui, this is the One Yang Nirvana pill. You're really interesting. It's great to have you as a companion. Ha! Eat quickly. Long Ting, who was covered in sweat, directly sent the fiery red pill she had just successfully refined into Chen Shui's mouth without even bothering to bottle it. Although Chen Shui had already decided to eat it, seeing Long Ting's mischievous appearance, she couldn't bear it. He snatched the spirit herb and sent a wisp of his consciousness into it to sense the profound mysteries within. Within the sparkling and translucent pill, there was a wisp of blood energy that made Chen Shui's heart palpitate. Eat, don't look. I'll help you condense a seal, lest you make a mistake. If I become Brother Hao, I'll be miserable. How could that be? Naturally, my body contains Chen Hao's blood essence. If your willpower is too weak and can't withstand a single blow, no matter how weak my willpower is, I'll still be stronger than you. Chen Shui directly swallowed the pill in one gulp. Ha! Long Ting laughed complacently. At the same time, what made Chen Shui frown was that the aura on this girl's body had suddenly changed. No, to be precise, the aura of Chen Hao's blood essence that was hidden within the pill in her body was suddenly emitted. How could this girl be so shameless? How could Chen Shui not understand what Long Ting wanted to do? Without a doubt, it was a blatant temptation. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 668. Once Chen Shui flared up, she would have to endure the pain of burning her body and burning her spirit by herself. This was a test for her, not to mention that Long Ting had even stimulated Chen Hao's blood essence to tempt her. Ha! Little Shui, I'm doing this for your own good. Don't look at me like that. If there's a first, then there's a 15th. When it flares up, see what I'll do to you. Chen Shui glared at Long Ting and said without any temper. After she finished speaking, she closed her eyes and prepared to welcome the upcoming challenge. The Nirvana pill wasn't used exclusively by Long Ting. Even though it was also used on Chen Hao, according to Long Ting's words, the effect wasn't big. Because her time with Chen Shui was staggered, she was late by the time of 4 pills. She believed that Chen Shui could persist until she completed the Nirvana pill in advance. At that time, she only needed to give Chen Hao continuous Nirvana pills that contained Chen Shui's blood essence. When Chen Shui couldn't persist anymore, yin and yang would fuse. The tempering of Chen Hao wasn't the slightest bit less. Only, the tempering of Chen Hao was far from being as intense as Long Ting's first time. This wasn't just a matter of time, but after the first time, the effect of this tempering on Chen Hao would be very weak. Precisely speaking, Chen Hao only became the antidote, and the one who was truly tempered was only Chen Shui. But one thing was for sure, and that was through this medicine, Chen Shui would be even more unswerving towards Chen Hao. Not long after, Chen Shui flared up. What caused Long Ting to be slightly surprised was that Chen Shui actually displayed a willpower that exceeded her expectations. She forcefully endured the first basic flare-up after the pill entered her body without even looking at her. After all, she had pushed Chen Hao's blood essence to the limit and approached Chen Shui's side, almost hugging her, but she didn't see the slightest thing that she wanted to see. Amazing, amazing. Little Shui, your willpower is really firm. I'm ashamed of my inferiority. What a powerful medicinal effect. Chen Shui, who was drenched in sweat, opened her eyes, but didn't pay attention to Long Ting and muttered. Her mind was even more immersed in the shocking improvement brought by the first baptism of the One-Yang Nirvana pill. Of course, this is a secret technique contained within an ancient artifact. How could it not be powerful? Long Ting said, I'm still waiting for you to molest me. Let me see how you look when you're naked. Dream on. If you want to find balance, you have no hope. Chen Shui found more and more that Long Ting, this fussy woman, was speechless. It was obvious that she was still brooding over the fact that she had seen her naked appearance. However, the more it was like this, the more harmonious her relationship with Long Ting became. Now, it's your turn to teach me that absolute art. All right, I'll tell you the method. You can study it slowly. Chen Shui said with a faint smile. After she finished speaking, she directly condensed a strand of divine sense and merged it into Long Ting's forehead. After a while, Long Ting screamed and directly pounced towards Chen Shui. Amidst Chen Shui's complacent laughter, the two of them started fighting. Facing Long Ting, who had an abnormal physical body, Chen Shui was obviously not Long Ting's match in terms of pure pinching. However, when Chen Shui's aura suddenly changed into that of a man, Long Ting was actually unable to bear it psychologically and retreated to the side in defeat. I'm not playing with you anymore. I'm going into the second world to take a look. Little Shui, give me your communication number. It's useless even if I give it to you. Right now, I'm in the second world and I'm completely isolated from the outside world. Chen Shui said. Then just change your identity and enter. Chen Hao did that? Why isn't he here? Could it be that he changed to a new one? As Long Ting spoke, she had already entered the second world. However, after contacting all of the accounts that Chen Hao had contacted her, there was no response. This situation lasted for an entire month. There was still no response. Hiss hiss hiss. In the room that Chen Hao was in, for an entire month, Chen Hao maintained the same posture as a month ago. He did not move at all. His eyes were open, but his pupils were no longer in focus. The aura around his body also emitted a strange, pure spiritual fluctuation. This spiritual fluctuation was formless and intangible, but it stirred up a cool breeze in the entire room. However, his posture moved slightly, but the current him was like a completely different person compared to the him from a month ago. Whether it was his aura or his appearance, all of them had undergone an unbelievable change. His aura did not become stronger, but had changed. Although it was not a fundamental change, but if it was not someone like Chen Shui or Long Ting who was really familiar with him, they would definitely not be able to recognize him through his aura. His spiritual energy was also worlds apart from his peak state a month ago. If he was a blooming flower a month ago, then now he was a withered leaf. He only needed a gust of wind to drift down and turn into dust. His appearance, the change was even greater. His originally jet black hair had now turned white. Even his pair of sharp eyebrows and the beard that had grown automatically over the past month were now snow white. If not for his skin and life aura still maintaining a youthful appearance, he would most likely be mistaken for an old man by anyone. Of course, his life aura was still young, but at this moment, it was much weaker than a month ago, and it was still weakening. Now, she could only be considered as an old-looking youth, a youth that was getting weaker and weaker. I'm sorry. At this moment, the door of the cultivation room had long been opened. The young girl who had already changed her name to Chen Xiaoqing silently knelt in front of Chen Hao, her mouth constantly muttering the 3 words, "I'm sorry." Originally, Chen Hao had asked her to wait in the cultivation room, to wait for him to think about it, to wait for him to make a decision, but, in her apprehension, after continuously waiting for a few days without any movement, she finally could not bear the torment in her heart and wanted to come out to take a look. But the scene that she saw when she came out made her aghast. Almost at a glance, she could confirm that Chen Hao had entered the demonic barrier. The so-called demonic barrier was a situation that any cultivator would encounter on the path of cultivation. However, everyone's demonic barrier was different. It could be said that there were thousands of demonic barriers, just like when Tantai Lian had fallen into the illusion of reality when she came out from planet Jian, that was also a type of demonic barrier. However, as long as it was a demonic barrier, it could only be jumped out by oneself. Any external force was useless. It could be interrupted, but no one knew what the consequences of the interruption would be. Therefore, as long as the other party's breath of life still existed, they could only wait patiently. Chen Xiaoqing was very clear that the lowly and insignificant her was definitely not the root cause of Chen Hao falling into the demonic barrier. However, she could feel that Chen Hao falling into the demonic barrier, more or less, should be related to her. At least, she should be the fuse that made Chen Hao think of something, which caused him to fall into the demonic barrier. Otherwise, it could not be so coincidental. Moreover, Chen Hao said that he needed to think about it, and asked her to wait. Originally, she thought that it would not be long before Chen Hao would be able to jump out of the demonic barrier and return to normal, but this wait was close to a month's time. She looked on helplessly as Chen Hao's jet black hair and eyebrows turned white little by little, and she looked on helplessly as Chen Hao's breath of life became weaker and weaker. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have forced you. I shouldn't have been insatiable. I shouldn't have pushed my luck. You saved me and gave me freedom. That's enough. That's enough. Chen Xiaoqing's eyes were already red and swollen. Even though she was at the human celestial stage, her body had already become numb after kneeling in front of Chen Hao for close to a month without activating her true core strength. If she could do it all over again, she would never force Chen Hao to follow by his side. Perhaps, to Chen Hao, she was just a burden, wasn't she? Why did she force it? Why was she greedy? Unfortunately, at this moment, she could only wait and pray that Chen Hao would jump out of the demonic barrier before his breath of life was completely exhausted. If he still couldn't do it at the last moment, then she could only take the risk of interrupting Chen Hao's demonic barrier. Only God knew what the result would be. When the demonic barrier jumped out by itself, It was a transformation and improvement of the state of mind. If it was interrupted, some people would only be slightly affected, or even not affected at all. It was just that they didn't succeed in crossing the demonic barrier. However, they still escaped from the demonic barrier and would have to face it again in the future. However, some people would become demented directly. When they woke up, they would still be sober in the demonic barrier and couldn't extricate themselves. That was a fool. If that was the case, it would be extremely difficult to recover. In the blink of an eye, another month had passed. Chen Hao's breath of life was getting weaker and weaker. His essence, qi, and spirit were as weak as an ordinary person. Chen Xiaoqing's mood became heavier and heavier. She became more and more regretful and anxious. After kneeling on the ground for a long time and staring nervously, her eyes had turned blood red. However, at this moment, swish! A strand of light suddenly escaped from between Chen Hao's eyebrows. Ah! The moment she saw the strand of light, Chen Xiaoqing let out a cry of surprise. There was movement, which meant Chen Hao's consciousness had been awakened. In other words, Chen Hao was going to successfully cross the demonic barrier. However, a second cry of surprise followed immediately. This was a cry of pure surprise. Damn! If something bad happens to my master, I will destroy you directly. Itoda, who was at the peak of the initial stage of the Earth celestial stage, said fiercely as he stared at Chen Xiaoqing fiercely. At this moment, he was many times more powerful than when he had just obtained Guanu's body. Although Guanu's soul hadn't been destroyed, Itoda's soul had been completely integrated with his body. As long as Guanu's soul was destroyed, the integration would be completed immediately. Who are you? Chen Xiaoqing couldn't believe her eyes. If she hadn't seen him appear from between Chen Hao's eyebrows with her own eyes, she would have regarded Itoda as an enemy. How could Chen Hao, who was at the Earth celestial stage, have a living person in his mind? This was a real living person, not a primordial spirit. Why do you care who I am? Swish. Swish. Brother E, forget it. It's useless to be angry with her. Hey, little girl, get up quickly and go to the cultivation room to recover to your peak state. Yeah, let's go, let's go. Chen Xiaoqing was so surprised that she couldn't speak. It was surprising enough that a living person had appeared. Now, two ancient divine beasts had appeared in front of her. No, to be exact, two ancient divine beasts had appeared in front of her. Chapter 669. A vermilion bird and a black tortoise. Although the two mythological beasts had shrunk their bodies by 1,000 times, the strong aura of ancient mythological beasts was still there. The black tortoise's golden body was one of Chen Hao's gains from the mysterious ice realm. As a mortal core cultivator from the number 1 family in the vast universe star, Chen Xiaoqing's knowledge was definitely more profound than the cultivators of the limitless star. How could she not recognize them? At this time, Chen Xiaoqing's only thought was that her new master was far more monstrous, more powerful, and more mysterious than she had imagined. It was normal for the two mythological beasts to be able to live in Chen Hao's mind, but a living person was not a mythological beast. Even if they had recognized their master, they should not be able to live in Chen Hao's mind. Why are you still standing there? Hurry up and recover. Ito-ta said fiercely. I'm sorry, what's the use of saying sorry? I'll let you recover. Recover to your peak state and be ready to sacrifice yourself for master. Ito-ta's character was obviously more fiery, and he did not care about anything. The vermilion bird and the black tortoise were relatively shrewd. After the two of them had reconstructed their golden bodies, the special inherited memories of the ancient mythological beasts had begun to awaken. Although they were not the real ancient mythological beasts of the ancient mythological beasts and could only be regarded as the descendants of the ancient mythological beasts, the awakening of their inherited memories made them smarter than ordinary people. Because of this, the two of them did not speak ill of Fan Xiaoqing. As the saying goes, things are different now. What if Fan Xiaoqing's status rose? Yes. Although Chen Xiaoqing was still in shock and did not understand the situation, he knew that this fierce cultivator meant that he had to recover to his peak condition before he could help his master. Even though he said, sacrifice, Chen Xiaoqing did not hesitate at all. Hiss! Chen Xiaoqing channeled his quintessential essence through his legs, which were completely numb from kneeling, and floated directly into the cultivation room. Immediately, Itoda, vermilion bird, black tortoise, one man and two beasts looked at each other, and at the same time, they released a gentle energy, as if the entire space was cut into a piece. Without disturbing Chen Hao at all, they took Chen Hao, who remained unchanged, and floated into the cultivation room. Chi chi chi. In an instant, streams of flowing light began to revolve around the cultivation room under the cooperation of one person and two heads. Immortal core crystals, origin stones, and precious ores that had been purified slowly condensed and constructed complex and mysterious runes. Chen Xiaoqing didn't know what runes they were condensing, but he knew that it was definitely for Chen Hao. Therefore, she only paid attention to it for a moment before she focused her mind and entered a state of full recovery. It took a full hour for Ito Ta, vermilion bird, and black tortoise to turn into a stream of light at the same time and enter Chen Hao's glabella again. At the same time, under old god's control, rolling spiritual spring water flowed out from between Chen Hao's eyebrows, instantly drowning Chen Hao and Chen Xiaoqing. Chen Xiaoqing. Just as Chen Xiaoqing was disturbed by the spiritual spring and her mind was in shock, old god's old and heart-stirring voice suddenly sounded in Chen Xiaoqing's mind. Master has fallen into the demonic barrier of the love of the 7 emotions and the 6 desires. This is Master's greatest inner demon. Although the main cause is not you, it was touched by you. Now, I want you to sacrifice yourself for Master. Are you willing? I am willing. As long as I can save Master, this servant is willing even if I can never be reincarnated. That's great. When the formation is activated, Master's inner demon illusion will appear before your eyes. If you see yourself, that will be the time for you to sacrifice yourself for Master. As for what to do, when you see the illusion, you will naturally understand. Yes. Although Chen Xiaoqing didn't know who the old voice in her mind was, she responded without hesitation. Beep beep beep. Beep beep beep. Division commanders and commanders of Donglu City, those who have not yet logged into the second world, please log in immediately and receive the message. In the independent space, Qin Shui and Long Ting suddenly sensed the notification and fluctuations from the independent space's barrier and immediately heard the notification from the aircraft manager. Receive the message? It should be information about the other 9 galaxies or the primitive secret realm. Log in and take a look. Chen Shui had already tempered herself to the peak of the initial stage of the Earth celestial stage. As she couldn't contact anyone at the moment, it was useless for her to log in to the second world. Therefore, she had not logged in. As for Long Ting, she only logged in once every 1 or 2 days to see if she could detect Chen Hao's aura. In these 2 months, Long Ting was a little puzzled that Chen Hao still hadn't appeared. However, she didn't care too much about it. In these few years, Chen Hao had not contacted her for a few months or even half a year. Now, it had only been slightly more than 2 months. Chen Shui and Long Ting did not hesitate and logged into the second world. Beep beep beep. Beep beep beep. Continuous notifications were heard. There were more than 100,000 of them, and each of them indicated that the sender was from the vast Universe Galaxy Alliance. The title of each message indicated the race, combat strength ranking, and name. There are so many messages. This is obviously the introduction of the top 10,000 elites from the other 9 tribes. What are the other 10,000 messages? Long Ting and Chen Shui, who were in 2 different places in the second world, as well as the cultivators who had just received the news, quickly opened the first message, then the second, the third. Every time a message was opened, the image of the foreign race expert that the message introduced would appear in the mind of the cultivator. Moreover, just like the real person, the image exuded a powerful aura. At the same time, a set of numbers would be marked above the image. What does this set of numbers mean? Just as everyone was puzzled, an explanation automatically appeared next to the numbers. It turned out that this was the combat strength of the cultivators from the 10 galaxies who had entered the primitive secret realm. The highest combat strength was 10 million. Phew, what a powerful aura. It's just an image and it's already so powerful. A combat strength of 9,600,000. If I were to meet him, I would have to avoid him. He must be much more powerful than Moling Takshu. Long Ting looked at the Wing Tribe's #1 elite, Wu Hen, in shock. She then flipped to the 2nd, 3rd, and 10th ranking of the Wing Tribe. After that, Long Ting stopped looking at the Wing Tribe and switched to the Bug Tribe, followed by the Dark Demon Tribe, Spectre Tribe, Elf Tribe, Succubus Tribe, Protoss Tribe, Heavenly Fiend Tribe, and the most complicated tribe in the 10 galaxies, the Tyrants. The Tyrants were the most complicated because they gathered members from the 9 major clans and countless other minor clans. It could be said that the Tyrants had cultivators from all the different clans. They welcomed everyone, regardless of which clan you were from. If you couldn't stay in your original clan and wanted to leave, the Tyrants were the best choice. Basically, it was an alliance of traders from all the major clans. Of course, the Tyrants had existed for hundreds of millions of years. Most of the cultivators were born and raised in the Tyrants. The Tyrants were so powerful that they had no feelings for the tribes that they belonged to. In their historical records, their ancestors were oppressed and persecuted by their original tribes. That was how they became members of the Tyrants. Because of this, the conflicts between the Tyrants and the other tribes were undoubtedly the most intense. Similarly, because the Tyrants contained the pure bloodlines of various tribes, they had spies all over the other tribes. It was impossible to guard against them. Therefore, they were also the most well-informed. There were pros and cons. For the same reason, the well-informed Tyrants were also the easiest for the other tribes to infiltrate. It was impossible to guard against them. The direct result of this situation was that there were no secrets among the 10 galaxies. Especially for a large-scale operation like the primitive secret realm, the Tyrants had become the transit station for information. The Tyrants had planted a large number of spies in the other tribes. They obtained first-hand information and sent it back to the Tyrants. The Tyrants then passed it on to the cultivators who participated in the operation. The spies among the cultivators from the other tribes were also sent back. This process repeated several times and was constantly perfected. What secrets were there to speak of? The Protoss, the Bug Tribe, and the Tyrants are so powerful. There are dozens of them with combat power above 900. In terms of top elites, the other tribes can't be compared to them at all. The top 10 in the Divine Temple should have combat power of 9 million. As for the rest, it's impossible. Beep, beep, beep. Just as Long Ting, Xianxia, and all the cultivators who were above the commander rank were checking the situation of the 9 tribes, they received a message from Red Target Awakening. You can check your combat power through this message and compare your combat power to know your position. Ah, this is not bad. All the human cultivators chose to check their combat power after receiving this message. 3,465,702? Only this much? Xiaoshui, have you checked? How much is it? After checking her combat power in the second world, Long Ting felt immense pressure. In the spaceship, her real body in the independent space looked at Chen Shui and asked. 3,140,000. Chen Shui said with a serious expression. I've seen that the other 9 races who can enter the top 10,000 have at least a combat power of 3,500,000. I guess they're the same as you, at the level of a commander. That's true. Let's take a look first and sense our aura. We should know our general situation. The combat power should be determined according to the aura in the second world. Mine is definitely not necessarily higher than yours by a little. You're older than me. Chen Shui glared at the smug Long Ting and said, Older? Xiao Shui, don't exaggerate. I'm only 5 years older than you. Even if I'm older than you by a few decades, we're still the same age. How dare you say that I'm older? I'm so angry. Chen Hao still hasn't contacted me. I wonder what his combat power is? I estimate at least 4 million. 4 million? This test is just for reference. It's not very accurate. I didn't say that his real combat power is only 4 million. Look at how excited you are. Long Ting looked at Chen Shui's expression and said. Chapter 670. That's more like it? Chen Shui said. Then she frowned slightly and said, "Little Ting, it's been more than 2 months and he hasn't contacted you. I feel something is wrong." "What's wrong?" "He used to not contact me for months. But it's different now. Even if his real body enters the second world, he doesn't have to worry about anything. Even if he's fighting in the second world, he should let us know." "That's true. But don't worry. Nothing can happen in the aircraft. When we reach the entrance of the primitive secret realm, we will definitely see him." The two of them talked for a while, then they started to open the messages one by one and imprint the information in their minds. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you know what's going on. If they met in the primitive secret realm, they could make a decision quickly. Remember, you have to enter his illusion with your real body. Blend the real with the illusion and break the illusion. Oh, you have to be gentle, you have to be meticulous and guide the movements in the illusion. 2 days ago, when Chen Shui, Long Ting, and the others received the news, there was a knock on the door of Chen Hao's top-class room in the aircraft. Unfortunately, there was no response. At this moment, the cultivation room was completely closed. Under the guidance of Old God, Itoda, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise had set up a mysterious array together. It was overflowing with spring light, and it was very charming. Chen Xiaoqing tossed and turned under the ferocious and powerful attack. She gasped for breath and moaned uncontrollably. She was in pain but happy at the same time, but she held on to a trace of clarity in her mind, and the last words of the old voice echoed in her mind. The so-called sacrifice, she thought was dying for Chen Hao, but she didn't expect it was just sacrificing her body. The mysterious array seemed to be connected with Chen Hao's mind and soul. All kinds of emotions and desires that surged in Chen Hao's mind made Chen Xiaoqing shocked. Although she wasn't the person involved, she almost lost her mind. The illusion that was full of joys and sorrows, the impermanence of gathering and dispersing, the venting of desires and so on, could be expressed incisively and vividly with just a look and a movement. It was full of confusion. In fact, if it wasn't for the protection left by the old god, Chen Xiaoqing would have fallen into it at the beginning, let alone waiting for an opportunity. The reason was very simple. Even though she wasn't the person involved, she'd already given her soul to Chen Hao. Moreover, she'd given it to him willingly. She was willing to be a slave for all eternity and give up everything for Chen Hao. Therefore, the situation of Chen Hao in the image would make her feel moved. Finally, when Chen Hao's breath of life was getting weaker and weaker, almost to the point of dying, Chen Xiaoqing grasped the rhythm of Chen Hao's illusion and took the initiative to attack. Although the female lead in the image was not her, but a girl who was much more beautiful and powerful than her, she didn't care at all. As long as she could help Chen Hao, everything was worth it. Originally, it was just an illusion. Chen Hao's body remained unchanged like a statue, and he didn't move at all. But as Chen Xiaoqing took the initiative to attack with a blushing face and coordinated with the movements in the illusion, gradually, the real and the illusion merged into one. Chen Hao's real body naturally moved the same way as he did in the illusion. Chen Xiaoqing, on the other hand, was trying to capture the woman in the illusion and maintain the exact same posture as her. So, there was the scene of the room full of spring just now. After the real and the illusion merged into one, Chen Hao, whose breath of life and spirit were weak to the extreme, automatically began to recover. The energy of heaven and earth in the top-grade spiritual spring that filled the entire space began to be absorbed by Chen Hao's body at an amazing speed. This meant that although Chen Hao did not get out of the demon's barrier, his soul and mind had established a connection with his body. To be exact, his mind was drifting out of the demon's barrier little by little. Finally, when Chen Xiaoqing could no longer control herself and let out a high-pitched moan, Chen Hao's movements became crazier and more ferocious. At this moment, the illusion and reality were separated. In the face of the surging and continuous attack, Chen Xiaoqing's mind was blank. After an unknown period of time, she finally fainted, but Chen Hao still did not stop, nor was he able to enter the state of spiritual and physical integration. He was still immersed in the demon's barrier, maintaining the same posture and the same movements as him in the illusion. And Chen Xiaoqing, who fainted, became a little sheep at his mercy. She was dying and coming back to life, hiss. For hours later, the scene changed, and they entered the next illusionary realm. Peng! It was also at this time that Chen Xiaoqing was released by the unconscious Chen Hao. She fell heavily to the ground and collapsed on the ground. Buzz! At the same time, the divine thoughts left in Chen Xiaoqing's mind shook slightly, and Chen Xiaoqing, who was sore and weak, woke up. Ah! Chen Xiaoqing abruptly opened his eyes, and when he saw that he was standing proudly like a lively dragon and not moving again, he felt slightly relieved. At this moment, Chen Hao's hair, eyebrows, and beard had once again become a shiny black color. He was full of energy and vitality, and his life aura was majestic. Moreover, he was even stronger than when he was in his peak state before he fell into the demonic barrier. Obviously, Chen Hao's abnormal automatic recovery ability and the nourishment of Chen Xiaoqing's vital yin had allowed him to reach a higher level of enlightenment. And Chen Xiaoqing, who had lost her vital yin, was extremely weak and lost her luster because she did not enter the state of spiritual and physical integration. Chen Xiaoqing, you did a good job, but you have to hold on. Calm your mind and start to recover. As long as there is an illusion of yin and yang blending, you have to be like this time. Don't worry about what I see, I'm not a human being at all, I'm just Master's device spirit. So, you don't have to worry, yes. Suddenly hearing the old voice of the old god again, Chen Xiaoqing subconsciously covered her breasts and private parts, feeling uneasy and ashamed. Fortunately, the old god explained, which made her feel a little relieved. Time passed day by day. Chen Xiaoqing could not remember how many times she had been knocked out by Chen Hao, nor could she describe her feelings, but she knew that she had to continue, until Chen Hao got through the demon's barrier. Whether it was her, the old god, the treasure-hunting sword spirit, Itoda, or the others, the only thing they were worried about was that Chen Hao still could not get out of the demon's barrier when the aircraft arrived at the primitive secret area. If that was the case, Chen Hao would lose the opportunity to enter the primitive secret area, unless they woke up Chen Hao. But even the old god did not dare to wake up Chen Hao directly. The only hope was that Chen Xiaoqing could persist until Chen Hao's desire was really satisfied in the demon's barrier and enter the state of spiritual and physical integration. Only then could Chen Xiaoqing wake him up. But based on the current situation, it seemed that the overly sensitive Chen Xiaoqing would be conquered by the ferocious Chen Hao very quickly and be tortured to death. Of course, the most important thing was that the old god did not want to wake Chen Hao up. Instead, he hoped that Chen Hao could get through the demon's barrier in one go. Even if he entered the primitive secret area later or did not enter at all, it was worth it. As an ancient spiritual treasure, he knew that after entering the primitive secret area, with Chen Hao's strength, luck, and the treasure-hunting sword spirit that could unleash a stronger ability, as well as the cultivators of the 9 great clans and the internal cultivators of the human clan, it was an excellent opportunity for Chen Hao to gain experience in all aspects. But in the eyes of the old god, Chen Hao's emotional barrier was more important than anything else. It was just that Chen Xiaoqing had to suffer. Illusions continued to appear. Helian Wuzi, Xia Yuyu, Tantai Lian, Chen Shui, the beautiful sisters of the Lung clan, Long Ting, and even Xiao Mei, all of them appeared one after another. Every time, Chen Xiaoqing would be filled with anticipation and fear at the same time. Only when the beautiful sisters appeared at the same time would she only watch. There was no other way. The beautiful sisters were both appearing at the same time. Chen Xiaoqing still had no way to split herself into two and substitute Chen Hao into one of reality and illusion, so she could only watch. But from beginning to end, Chen Xiaoqing herself did not appear. The illusions were like a realistic representation of the future. They looked like individual illusions, but as time passed, all the illusions seemed to be connected together. Chen Hao's sister, Chen Yan, also appeared. But in the illusions, there was no romantic scene. Chen Yan's ending was that she left sadly. Even though there was no sound and only an image, Chen Xiaoqing could tell that Chen Yan's expression, actions, and mouth shape in the illusions had dealt a huge blow to Chen Hao in the illusions. Every woman, to be exact, brought harm to Chen Hao in the end, or even killed. The origin of the illusions was because of Chen Hao's misgivings and inner demons. Every time, Chen Hao would feel a heart-wrenching pain as he allowed his opponent to leave or allow his opponent to kill him. Wrong, it was all because of her, wasn't it? 5 months later. Ah! What made Chen Shaoqing almost scream was that she actually appeared in the illusions. It was the first time she had appeared. Everyone, we will reach the entrance of the primitive mystic realm in 10 days. The primitive mystic realm will open in about a month. Everyone, please adjust yourselves to peak condition. Everyone, a few months ago, the spacecrafts had become a huge army. In the entire mission, the 50 legions had gathered together. There were a total of 500,000 spacecrafts densely packed together. At this time, the voice of the controller of the aircrafts could be heard from every aircraft. The chaotic space they were in now was extremely dark. There were no star fragments or light. There was only a raging space storm. The defense systems of the aircrafts were fully activated to resist. Similarly, in the depths of the chaotic space far away, there were also huge aircrafts in other directions. Chapter 671. East Flow City Flying Ship 1. It's been 5 months. How infuriating. He hasn't contacted me in such a long time. If I didn't know that nothing could have happened to him in the flying ship. Long Ting was like an ant on a hot pan. She had completely lost it 2 months ago. How could it be like this? Long Ting could understand not contacting him for 2 to 3 months or even half a year. But now, he was about to enter the primal mystic realm. After obtaining the information, let alone Long Ting, even the strongest person of the human race this time felt like a mountain was pear. But Chen Hao hadn't contacted her for an entire 5 months. This was too outrageous. I think he should have something. Although Chen Shui wasn't as impatient as Long Ting, the worry in her eyes was even stronger than Long Ting's. Something? What could it be? I don't know, but if it wasn't something, he wouldn't have not contacted us for such a long time. Whether it's you, me, or Xiao Wu and the others at this time, it's impossible that he didn't tell us something. He just finished his training. If he were to enter the second world, he would definitely be training in the arena or training grounds. There's no reason for him not to contact you. The only possibility is that he didn't enter the second world. Could it be that he couldn't bear to spend? That's impossible. Long Ting frowned. They had their own independent space and could enter the second world at any time. But they had also heard that in the entire East Flow City, only the cultivators above the rank of captain could receive such treatment. The other flying ships all had to be paid for. But with Long Ting's understanding of Chen Hao, there was no reason for him to be unwilling to spend. Immortal origin crystals were just a pile of rubbish to him. As long as he wanted to, he could instantly wipe out the top families. Let's comprehend. I can't think of any other reason. It's already been 5 months. We're about to reach the entrance of the primal mystic realm. Forget it, when we arrive, we can still find him without entering the second world. Long Ting is ranked 154, Bailey Ningbing is ranked 161, and Long Yi is ranked 389. The Long family is really powerful, and they're at the peak of the initial stage of the Earth's celestial stage. Just based on their battle strength, Long Yi will definitely become a disciple of the temple. Bailey Ningbing is also powerful. The small limitless planet has completely changed its fortunes. Chen Hao from the Wuji star hasn't checked his combat power yet, but since he passed the test and got the qualification to enter, he must be very strong. That's for sure. In just 3 to 4 years, he was able to advance to the Earth's celestial stage and didn't join any forces. He must be quite awesome. However, compared to Bailey Ningbing, he's definitely lacking. The results of the preliminary test will indeed differ from the real situation. Things like luck and opportunity can't be determined through the test. Bailey Ningbing entered the Perpetual Life sect first and then became a disciple of the Divine Temple. Her luck is unparalleled. She's just a little worse than Long Ting's. Otherwise, she wouldn't be weaker than Long Ting. What's the point of discussing him? No matter how strong he was now, he would still die in a few years. There's no doubt about it. In World 2, in Yang City, in the center of the Alliance, Enormous pagoda steels 3,000 meters wide and 300,000 meters tall appeared in all of the public squares. The steels were covered with glittering golden names. Only the names at the bottom of the pagoda steels were gray. All the names on the steels were golden. Behind the names were the eye-catching combat strength value, cultivation level, force they belonged to, and place of origin. Almost all of the names were from planets that were in the same area as the Yang star. Only a few were not from the Yang star, but they had set off from the Yang star to participate in the primitive mystic realm. 99% of the forces they belonged to were also under the Yang star's rule. Even Xianxia's name was at the bottom of the pagoda steels. The reason was that he hadn't checked his combat strength value in World 2, so he wasn't ranked at the moment. It could be said that the names on the pagoda steels belonged to all the cultivators from the Yang star who had participated in the primitive mystic realm, as well as all the outsiders who had participated in the primitive mystic realm from the Yang star legion. For example, Chen Hao and Long Ting's names would appear in World 2, Yang City. Similarly, their names would appear in East Flow City, where he was, and Golden Harbor City, where East Flow City was a part of. He would be listed on the pagoda steels in all three places. Cultivators like Chen Hao, Long Ting, Long Yi, and Bei Ningbing, who hadn't set off from the Yang star, would be listed on the pagoda steels as long as they had been born within the Yang star's territory. Only about 1% of the Yang star legion's army of 10 million people, which was about 100,000 people. The most eye-catching people were precisely this 1% or so. This was because the forces they belonged to were basically the top forces in the vast universe galaxy. The most eye-catching people were undoubtedly the experts sent by the Sacred Temple who were above the rank of commander. The Sacred Temple had sent 222 disciples who were above the rank of commander. Long Ting and Bei Ningbing were the only two Sacred Temple disciples who didn't belong to the Yang Star Legion. Long Yi was a disciple of the Death Door sect and also didn't belong to the Yang Star Legion. However, the names of these three people were frequently mentioned in the crowd. Of course, when the three of them were mentioned, Chen Hao would be mentioned. However, Chen Hao's affairs were no longer a secret on the Wuji star. Until now, no one believed that Chen Hao would be able to survive the appointed battle in 10 years. At the same time, every city in the Second World was bustling with noise and excitement. Countless cultivators, regardless of whether they were human immortals, earth immortals, or celestial immortals, had gathered in huge squares at the center of the alliance. However, this was only a small commotion. Once the primitive mystic realm was officially opened, it would definitely be unprecedentedly lively. When the time came, a huge pagoda steel thousands of miles tall and tens of thousands of miles long would appear. It would be the overall ranking of the 500 million cultivators in the human army. The ranking wouldn't be a ranking of combat strength, but a ranking of the contribution points each cultivator had earned to the human race. It would also display the main deeds they had done in the primitive mystic realm, such as the foreign races they had obtained and killed. In addition, important news would be transmitted to every cultivator in the Second World from time to time. This was a grand event that would shake the entire world of cultivators regardless of their realms. It was a grand event to win Chi Luck. Moreover, it wasn't just the human race. The other 9 groups also used their own methods of information transmission to announce all the news in the primitive mystic realm, including every person and every event. In a square in Yang City, 2 middle-aged men stood proudly among the crowd. Although one of them had concealed his aura, the surrounding cultivators, including the masters of the Heaven Immortal stage, felt that he was unfathomable. The other middle-aged man's aura was slightly weaker, but he was also a master of the Heaven Immortal stage. Junior brother's name is still Gray. Senior brother, is junior brother not going to check his combat strength? Or is he still worried about something? I don't know the reason either. However, when we last communicated, I felt that he wouldn't be worried about anything. Based on the image in the Second World, I can confirm that his combat strength is definitely around 4 million. The peak of the initial stage of the Earth Immortal stage. Around 4 million. Doesn't that mean he's more powerful than most of the cultivators who are at the same level as the group leaders? That's the truth. Second junior brother, our junior brother. I have a feeling that in less than 10 years, this time, the primitive mystic realm of the Earth Immortal stage, his name will be known throughout the entire world of cultivators. The world of cultivators in the 10 galaxies. If that's the case, won't the Valley of Happiness be alerted? At that time, they will definitely hire an invincible heaven immortal. Second junior brother, if our youngest junior brother can cause a sensation in the world of cultivators in the 10 galaxies, do you think the Divine Palace will sit by and watch him die in the hands of an invincible heaven immortal? We'll see when the time comes. Let's go. We'll come again when the primitive mystic realm opens. Okay. These two people were the first and second disciples of the patriarch of the Wuji sect, Chen Hao's eldest senior brother, Gu Chen, and his second senior brother, whom he had never met or contacted before. Similarly, before Gu Chen and his second senior brother came, Guan Nanchao and Lu Qingyang, the two big shots of the Wuji sect, also came to see the pagoda stele. Guan Nanchao was delighted to see Bailey Ningbing, who was high up in the air, and he felt extremely honored. Seeing that Chen Hao still didn't show his combat strength, they were also confused. However, they also knew that once Chen Hao checked his combat strength, it would be more dazzling than Bailey Ningbing's. This was the reality that Guan Nanchao had to admit. As for the people from the Happy Valley, they were still in the dark. They only knew that Chen Hao, who had disappeared for a few years, had made shocking progress and passed the test to obtain the qualification to enter the primitive mystic realm. Seeing that Chen Hao's name still didn't show his combat strength, they only felt disdain in their hearts. They thought that Chen Hao was still worried about them. However, their only worry now was that Chen Hao had obtained some great opportunity in the primitive mystic realm. When that time came, it would attract the attention of the Divine Temple and they would intervene. That would be bad. However, this was only a slight worry. After all, although Chen Hao's progress was shocking and he was able to pass the test at the initial stage of the Earth Celestial stage, he was definitely a figure in the vast universe galaxy's Genius Guild. However, among these cultivators who were basically at the peak of the advanced stage of the Earth Celestial stage, his strength couldn't be that high. At the very least, he was far inferior to Long Ting and Bailey Ningbing who had entered the Divine Temple. Unfortunately, if they knew that Bailey Ningbing had been trampled by Chen Hao after entering the Divine Temple, they wouldn't think so. Chance. Chen Shaoqing, this is our chance. A chance to help him break through his demonic barrier. Remember, start with the illusion. No matter what, persist until your body and soul merge with the illusion. Once your body and soul merge, follow the illusion and cooperate with him. However, in the end, you have to go against the illusion and treat him with your own heart. Not the way you treated him in the illusion. Do you understand what I mean? When he saw Chen Shaoqing appear in Chen Hao's demonic barrier for the first time, Old God was excited and instantly seized the best opportunity to help Chen Hao break through his demonic barrier. Chapter 672. Cause and Effect. Tie the bell and untie the bell. Chen Shaoqing, who was originally insignificant, could not even be considered as the fuse. After all, Chen Hao was only a little conflicted about how to deal with her. The real fuse was completely the old god's words. Similarly, the one who controlled all of this was also the old god. But at the beginning, Chen Shaoqing, who made Chen Hao feel awkward, who made the old god fly into a rage and was willing to give up everything, at the last moment, broke out of her cocoon and blossomed into a bright light, triggering Chen Hao's sort of spiritual wisdom. Rumble. Rumble. In the final moment of the fusion of spirit and flesh, Chen Shaoqing followed the old god's instructions and reversed the illusion. When Chen Shaoqing broke through the shackles of the soul in Chen Hao's body and reversed the illusion, it stirred up an insignificant ripple. However, the ripple quickly spread and seeped into the depths of Chen Hao's soul, who was immersed in the demonic repellent. Then Chen Hao, who was immersed in the demonic repellent, caught a hint of abnormality. The light of intelligence began to bloom, and the insignificant ripple began to surge and grow. In the end, it evolved into a monstrous wave. Finally, a loud rumble began to erupt in Chen Hao's mind. Disillusionment. Reality, this is reality. Inner demon? Inner demon, has it been broken? Chen Hao's consciousness completely returned to his body. He could clearly feel the petite body that was tightly hugging him, clamping him, and crazily kissing him. She wanted to use this passionate, unreserved, and intense action to tell him that she wasn't the person in the illusion. She wasn't now, and she wouldn't be in the future. Chen Hao did not open his eyes. He was still quietly feeling, thinking. Had it been broken or not? Although Chen Hao could clearly feel that his state of mind and soul had once again undergone a qualitative transformation, but he could not be sure. Because the person in his arms was Qin Shaoqing. She was a stranger he had met by chance, and she was willing to give up everything for him because he had saved her. Even though he had broken the illusion, her status and identity seemed too weak. To be exact, she couldn't be compared to Chen Shui and the others. Just like how a dike of 1,000 miles could be destroyed by an ant's nest, the destruction brought by Qin Shaoqing was only the beginning of the birth of an ant's nest. It was far from the level of dike destruction. Phew. Anyway, it's starting. Chen Hao abruptly opened his eyes and hugged Qin Shaoqing back. But you're awake. Chen Xiaoqing's face, which was already flushed from the intense exercise, turned completely red at this moment. Her entire body stiffened, and she didn't dare to move at all, nor did she have the strength to move at all. It's all right. Thank you for your hard work. Chen Hao only glanced at the surrounding scene, and then associated it with the realistic experience in the illusion. He basically understood how much time had passed, what he had experienced, and what Qin Shaoqing had done. Otherwise, his life force, essence, and spirit would not be at their peak state. It's not hard at all. To be able to serve Master is Xiaoqing's fortune. Chen Shaoqing had just finished speaking when she closed her eyes. With a soft smile on her face, she fell into a deep sleep. Tired, she was too tired. Whether it was her mind or her body, she had reached her limit. Slowly coming out of Qin Shaoqing's body, Chen Hao's forehead shone with a dazzling light that directly enveloped him. Immediately, Qin Shaoqing disappeared in front of him. Take good care of her. Don't worry, Master. Old God replied. Psst. With a flash of light, Chen Hao appeared in Yang's city of the second world. Beep, beep, beep. A continuous stream of information notifications came. Even though Chen Hao had long been prepared for the news, he did not expect it to be so many. More than 100,000 messages. With a glance, Chen Hao understood what was going on. Without opening any of them or looking at them in detail, Chen Hao directly called Long Ting. After not contacting Long Ting for 5 months, Chen Hao knew how anxious this girl was. As for Qin Shui, he could not contact her in the second world, so he did not need to worry. However, Chen Hao did not know that Long Ting had already gotten together with Qin Shui long ago. Little Shui. He's here. In the second world, Long Ting, who suddenly received a communication request from Chen Hao, screamed excitedly in her true body in the independent space of the aircraft and said to Qin Shui excitedly, "You still remember to come up?" After connecting the call, Long Ting directly asked angrily, "What's going on? Don't you know we'll be anxious?" "This? Sister Ting, I had an accident and fell into a demonic barrier. Luckily, I woke up in time." Demonic barrier? Long Ting was shocked. She immediately looked at Qin Shui. He fell into a demonic barrier. I just came out and contacted you as soon as I went online. Alright, don't worry. Oh, have you seen the message? You're going alone this time. You must be careful. I haven't had time to see it. Then take a look first. We'll reach the entrance of the primitive mystic realm in less than 10 days. The estimated opening time is 1 month later. Take a look at your own combat power and compare it with. Check my combat power. This time, according to the information we've received, we've used the same combat power calculation method for all the Earth celestial stage experts who are participating in the primitive mystic realm. The highest combat power is 10 million. You'll understand when you see the message you've received. Alright, that's all for now. Wait, let me tell you something. Little Shui is with me. Also, I helped her refine pills. Pills? Nirvana pills? That's right. I've discussed it with Little Shui. When the time comes, you'll contribute more blood essence to refine pills for Helian Wuzi, Xia Yuyu, Ling Ninghuan, and Ling Ningle. Although it won't do you any good, it'll do them a lot of good. When the time comes, you'll just have to continuously consume nirvana pills and the problem will be solved. Cough cough. That's a good feeling. It's just that I'm suffering. I'll take my leave first. I'll serve you well. Goodbye. Long Ting looked at Chen Hao's image teasingly before cutting off the connection. Chen Hao smiled and began to scan the information in his mind. Instantly, he saw the eye-catching combat power information in red. After opening it, Chen Hao took a deep breath. In an instant, he raised his energy to the maximum in the second world and tapped on the test. Beep beep beep. Your combat power is 7,849,05. Swoosh. The moment Chen Hao saw his combat power value, a brilliant light suddenly flashed from the bottom of the pagoda steels erected in the countless plazas of the alliance of Yang City, East Flow City, and Golden Harbor City in the second world. The countless cultivators who were looking at the pagoda steels immediately caught the source of the light. Chen Hao's name. A gray name. Hiss. Soon after, the name on the entire pagoda steel began to ripple like water. Chen Hao's golden name slowly rose up and continued to rise. Yang City. But Chen Hao. Wuji Planet's Chen Hao's combat power is out. Chen Hao's test? Fuck. It's still rising. No way. He's surpassed more than 100 miles of ice. He's surpassed Long Ting. This. When Chen Hao's name still didn't show his specific combat strength, it had already caused a huge uproar as it continued to rise. On the Yang planet, it could be said that Chen Hao's name was known by almost everyone. Although he had been silent for a few years, Long Ting and Bailey Ningbing, who were related to him, were always mentioned along with their names. In fact, many people were looking forward to seeing Chen Hao's future. Although most of them thought that Chen Hao would die, they were still curious to see how far he would go. No. Is this real? When Chen Hao's name slowed down, it surpassed all the disciples of the sanctum and showed no signs of stopping. When it started to surpass a master with a combat power of 6,640,000, everyone was stunned. They could not believe what they were seeing. And it did not stop. Number 3. Combat power of 7,849,05. Is this possible? Although the human celestial realm cultivators did not know, they were impressed. The Earth celestial realm cultivators who did not have the strength to enter the primitive secret realm wanted to kill themselves. They were all Earth celestials, but Chen Hao was at the peak of the early stage Earth celestial realm. The heavenly celestial realm cultivators were a little dumbfounded. It was not that the heavenly celestial realm cultivators were not as good as Chen Hao's combat power, but they knew better than anyone what it meant for someone at the peak of the early stage Earth celestial realm to reach third place, second only to the 2 sanctum disciples of Yang planet who were at the peak of the late stage Earth celestial realm. Beep beep beep. Valley Master, Chen Hao's combat power has increased. Heavenly Master Qing Yang, Chen Hao's combat power is out. He's so powerful. Heavenly Master Nan Chao, Heavenly Master Guchen, Family Master. At this moment, messages were being sent to Happy Valley, Wuji Planet, Demonic Ant Planet, the Shiman family, the Alliance Enforcer Group, and so on. At the same time, there was a huge commotion in East Flow City and Golden Harbor City. For the time being, East Flow City only ranked the combat power of masters. The Sanctum disciple, Chen Lin, was at the top of the list without any suspense. However, a name that suddenly appeared soared into the sky and reached the top of the list. This was a small soldier with no identity or background. He did not belong to any major faction. He was born on a small planet under the jurisdiction of Yang Planet, but it was a small planet that everyone was familiar with. Chen Hao. Up until this moment, no one had paid any attention to Chen Hao, whose name was gray at the bottom of the tower steel, but at this moment, it brought about a storm in East Flow City. Many people recalled the name that had shaken the vast universe galaxy a few years ago. Infinite Star of the Yang Star region, Chen Hao. Chapter 673. In the Golden Harbor City, Chen Hao, a mere soldier, was ranked 8th. Only the commander, deputy commander, and 4 division commanders were ranked higher than Chen Hao. When eldest senior brother Gu Chen received Chen Hao's combat power, his expression was one of embarrassment, shame, and shame. Damn it, he had estimated that Chen Hao's combat power would be around 4 million, and this was already taking into account the maximum weakening effect of the video. But at this moment, it was completely overturned. Chen Hao's combat power was close to 785 points, which was almost twice his estimate. Cough cough. Second junior brother. That youngest junior brother's combat power is out. It's a little different from my estimation, Gu Chen said awkwardly. Is the difference a little too big? It's a little big. It's almost twice the difference. That's still more than 20,000 points. It's quite rare for someone at the peak of the beginner stage of Earth Celestial to have a combat power of more than 20,000 points. After all, youngest junior brother did not join any of the top factions. It seems like he was affected by it. Cough cough. Second junior brother, our youngest junior brother's combat power is 7,849,05. What? This is too powerful. Brother Nanchao, you're really wise and powerful. Phew. I can't believe it either. How is this possible? How is this possible? He's only at the peak of the beginner stage of Earth Celestial and he has such a terrifying combat power. He's even more powerful than the geniuses at the peak of the latter stage of Earth Celestial from the Sanctum. Phew. It seems like the battle in 10 years is going to be troublesome. Valley Master, this kid is too scary. No matter what, we have to kill him. Otherwise, when he grows up, I'm afraid that the Happy Valley, you, immediately summon the demonic ant planet, and all the planets that have conflicts with this kid. Inform them of the seriousness of this matter. Those who should contribute should contribute. By the way, inform the Alliance's law enforcement hall to join in as well. Come up with a plan as soon as possible and go to the vast universe sanctum to bribe them at all costs. As long as the sanctum doesn't interfere, it's fine. Also, contact some of the top heavenly celestial elites in the vast universe galaxy. Those who are interested should sign a contract with this kid before he becomes too famous. Yes, Valley Master. The Valley Master of the Valley of Happiness was well aware of what such a heaven-defying combat power meant, especially when he thought about how Chen Hao had been in hiding for the past few years. Once his name truly shook the vast universe galaxy, the temple would make an exception and forcefully intervene in this matter, and the 10-year agreement would most likely be voided. Therefore, they had to bribe the higher-ups of the sacred temple who were in charge of the Yang planet. At the same time, they had to sign a contract with the famous celestial immortal realm masters in the vast universe galaxy in advance. If they delayed any longer, those celestial immortal realm masters might have scruples and be unwilling to take action. 7,849,005. In Yang City in the Second World, Chen Hao had no idea what kind of sensation his combat power had caused. Instead, he looked at the numbers and shook his head frankly. Nirvana Elixir, 9-layered mystical fire, 9-layered mystical ice. My body is much stronger than Long Ting's at her peak. The state of I am heaven and earth are me, is my normal state. Plus, my biggest inner demon has broken through the first step. My soul, will, comprehension of the heavenly way, and the realm of swordsmanship have all reached the level of a half-step heavenly celestial. And I'm a super genius half-step heavenly celestial. My combat skills are also on my path. My foundation is solid, and there's no weakness. How can I only get 7,850,000 points in such a state? I'm afraid that only a genius at the peak of the late Earth celestial stage can achieve this? Chen Hao thought gloomily in his heart. In his opinion, the full score of 10 million points could only be achieved by the top elites of all the races and Earth celestial stage elites who had participated in the primitive secret realm. Ordinary elites should have more than 9 million points. Even more ordinary ones should have more than 8 million points. Middle-grade elites should have more than 7 million points. At least he had been a captain when he took the test, or maybe even more. After all, he was not a disciple of the divine temples. No matter how good his test results were, he could not be a captain. But now, his combat power was so low. However, when the gloomy Chen Hao clicked on the introductions of the elites of the 9 galaxies, he was dumbfounded. After a comparison, he knew how abnormal his combat power was. Obviously, the evaluation of combat power was not the way he thought it was at all. Awesome, too awesome. Chen Hao from the Wuji planet, after a few years of silence, is ranked 3rd in terms of combat power, second only to the commander and deputy commander of our Yang planet. This is incredible. He's definitely the #1 genius on our Yang planet. Moreover, he's unprecedented. Judging from his current stage, that's true. But it's hard to say whether he can survive or not. At this moment, Chen Hao, who was sitting cross-legged in a corner of the street in Yang City and wearing a black bamboo hat, heard the conversations of the passers-by. Many people were talking about him. How did they find out so quickly? Curious, Chen Hao stepped onto the main road and asked a strange cultivator. Only then did he learn that there was a ranking on the pagoda stele in the center of the alliance. Beep, beep, beep. Everyone, the signal of the second world is about to disappear. Please exit normally within 10 minutes. Just as Chen Hao was about to go to the square in the center of the alliance, a message came to his mind. Beep, beep, beep. Long Ting, who also received the message, immediately called Chen Hao and asked directly, "What's your combat power? How much do you have?" Chen Hao smiled faintly. He, who already knew how awesome he was, naturally revealed a smug expression. "I have 3. 46 million, Xiaoxue has 3. 14 million. How much do you have? Tell me quickly, it's too late." "Ah, twice as much as yours, twice as much? Add another 800,000. Well, that's about it." "Ha." Chen Hao looked at Long Ting's widened eyes and could not help but laugh proudly. "Brother Hao, you're so fierce." "Ha, this is not fierce. When we do that, you'll know how fierce I am. Pervert. Get off now." Long Ting said coquettishly. She was not shy. Instead, she looked at Chen Hao provocatively and seductively and cut off the call. After that, it turned into Chen Shui's dumbstruck expression and the pride she felt because of Chen Hao. The commotion caused by Chen Hao's battle prowess was not limited to this, and it was not as simple as that. This was because Chen Hao's ranking and information directly attracted the attention of the upper echelons of the human race. This was more direct and violent than Chen Hao's heaven-defying preliminary test results a few years ago. At the same time, the information obtained by the other 9 galaxies also changed at the fastest speed. "Brother Chen Lin, I received the news about Chen Hao?" In the independent space of the aircraft, Chen Lin took his hand away from the plump breasts of the Panny's side current and asked. He was not in a hurry. If he wanted to deal with the Panny's side current, he would have done it in these 5 months. There was no need to wait until now. First, he had to pay attention to his image. If he did it now, it would seem that he was too impatient. Moreover, Long Ting was in his aircraft. Second, the Panny's side current still had a lot of room for improvement. If he settled the relationship and aided in the future, the taste would naturally be better and the harvest would be greater. Therefore, right now, he was just addicted to his mouth, hands, and eyes. Well, Chen Hao's combat power, oh? How did it exceed 4 million? Brother Moling asked me to take care of him. Chen Lin saw the expression of the Panny's side current and intuitively felt that Chen Hao's combat power should be a bit high, but he did not care at all. He smiled and said proudly, "More than 5 million? Brother Chen Lin, very high. Even I don't believe it." Maybe there is a problem with the combat power evaluation. Panny's side current turned her gaze to the side and whispered. She knew very well that in front of a man, talking about how strong another man was not what a smart woman should do. However, she was in the Panny's side current city in the second world. Chen Lin also told her to pay attention to Chen Hao's combat power. Now that she was out, she naturally had to say it. Could it be 6 million? Chen Lin frowned slightly. Chen Hao was just at the early stage of the Earth celestial stage. If it reached 6 million, Although there was still a big gap between them, his potential was not something he could compare with. It's 7,007,849,05. What? Chen Lin stood up and lost his usual calmness. He stared at the Panny's side current and said, "Are you sure the messenger didn't make a mistake?" "I'm sure. I can't believe it, so I asked several times. His combat power ranking surpassed you, Brother Chen Lin. He became the first in the Panny's side current city. How is this possible? He's just at the peak of the early stage of the Earth's celestial stage. How can he be so strong?" "Brother Chen Lin, it must be a problem with the combat power evaluation method. We've all seen him. His aura is far inferior to yours, Brother Chen Lin. It's impossible for him to be stronger than you. Besides, his combat power is only higher than yours by 100,000 points. Even if it's true, in a real battle, he's definitely not a match for you, Brother Chen Lin." Panny's side current comforted him. Although she herself was a little doubtful that her words might not be reliable, because when she saw Chen Hao, she thought of a person, Leng Shui, who had fought with her in the second world and who had made her impulsive to confess. At that time, she had impulsively confessed because after the real battle, she had felt that Leng Shui's perfect combat skills were beyond her imagination. There was no winner or loser, but the other party did not want to win, because that was his fighting style. Everyone would let you play to your heart's content, and then defeat you with what you were best at. She was sure that if Leng Shui had wanted to defeat her at that time, he would have done it in a few moves. Chapter 674. That was the reason why Pan Dong Lu impulsively confessed. However, Leng Shui's rejection and the old voice could only make her retreat. Later, because of this trip to the primitive secret area of the Earth's celestial stage and the introduction of her family elders, she met a man who was worthy of her commitment in all aspects, Chen Lin. Moreover, Chen Lin's gentleness and interest in her made her even more delighted. So when she met Chen Hao again and sensed a trace of aura that could only be sensed from Leng Shui, although she guessed that Leng Shui might be Chen Hao, she did not regret her decision at all. At least, no matter what, Chen Hao was better. Of course, appearance was an exception. But for men, appearance was the least important. As long as one was not ugly, one could be infinitely charming. It depended on how capable one was, but now, Pan Dong Lu looked at Chen Lin, who had almost finished the last step. His shocked and aghast look made her feel a strange feeling in her heart. Was it regret? She was not sure, but at least, from now on, the former Leng Shui, or Chen Hao, would forever be in existence in her memory, an existence who had a chance but missed. Who? Exiting the second world, Chen Hao waved his hand and cleared the formation of Itoda, Suzaku and Black Tortoise in the practice room under the guidance of Old God. Every sip and every peck, is it predestined? This sentence appeared in Chen Hao's mind. He slowly stepped out of the practice room, faintly comprehending something. Practitioners went against the natural order and paid attention to following one's heart and nature. Only then could they bravely advance. It seemed that only in this way could the practitioners get rid of their inner demons. In fact, with the improvement of a practitioner's realm, the role of the state of mind became more and more important, even surpassing the talent conditions such as soul and comprehension. To be exact, this was a process of cultivating the mind. Moreover, this time, Chen Hao also clearly understood the importance of following one's heart and nature. It had to be said that any of the 7 emotions and 6 desires of human beings, once suppressed, would become the root of the inner demons. If one could release himself at will, naturally, he would be far away from the inner demons. However, a new problem appeared in front of Chen Hao. What was the essence of inner demons or inner demons? Cultivation was something that defied the heavens, but what was the essence of it? Everything is predetermined, and predetermined is fate. To defy the heavens was to fight for one's life against the heavens. In the unseen world of fate, people, or things, if one acted according to one's desires, how could it be a heaven-defying act? Shaking his head, Chen Hao temporarily cast aside the doubts in his mind. This wasn't something he could comprehend at the moment, but he knew that he was one step closer to the door of fate. Dong. Right when Chen Hao picked a random bottle of wine from the cupboard that was full of precious wine to enjoy life, the knocks made of runes came from the door. Chen Hao's heart skipped a beat, and the curled-up Qin Shaoqing, who was still sound asleep, appeared in his arms. He quickly placed her on the huge, comfortable bed in the bedroom, covered her with a blanket, and closed the bedroom door. Then, Chen Hao opened the door. "Elder, what's the matter?" Chen Hao cupped his fist and asked when he saw the person. He didn't look displeased at all. "Phew, Mr. Chen, congratulations. I didn't expect you to be so powerful. Right now, our spacecraft is in a mess. Everyone is talking about you, Mr. Chen. It's just a reference number. It's not accurate," Chen Hao said. He was neither haughty nor arrogant, and his performance was just right. "Mr. Chen, it seems like you've improved in the past 5 months. I think Fan Xiaoqing's effect is not bad." Seeing that the person still didn't tell him why he was looking for him, Chen Hao didn't ask any more and answered patiently, "It's all right. I wonder if Mr. Chen is interested in the rest of them? I've been told by the head of the family that he would like to befriend a prodigy like Mr. Chen. If Mr. Chen is interested, among the other 19, 11 of them have primordial Yin body. Any one of them can serve you for free. If Mr. Chen is willing, all of them can serve you. Elder, you're too kind. Xiaoqing is enough. All right, Elder, when I enter the primitive secret area, please take care of Xiaoqing." "No problem. Before you come back, I'll leave this room to Xiaoqing. I promise there won't be any problems." "Thank you so much." "You're welcome, Mr. Chen." "You really don't need it?" Xiaoqing was raised by the Fan family. Even if you call all of them here, they won't have any problems with you. It's already a great blessing that you're willing to redeem her. Why don't I call all of them here, and you can decide after you take a look. Their primordial Yin body will only be beneficial to Mr. Chen. Chen Hao shook his head and said, "Elder, my desire has been extinguished. It's not good to have more. I appreciate your kindness." "All right. Then I won't disturb you anymore." The middle-aged man knew that he could not force Chen Hao, so he took his leave. At the same time, Chen Hao's words made him understand that Chen Hao only wanted Xiaoqing to get rid of his desire. He did not covet her primordial Yin body. That was reasonable. After all, with Chen Hao's talent, his potential was far from reaching its limit. Why would he want to improve himself through dual cultivation? Occasionally, he would vent his desire to prevent his inner demons from forming. That was enough. He would not choose dual cultivation as his main cultivation. Of course, different cultivators had different desires and would form different inner demons. Among male cultivators, the 7 emotions and the 6 desires occupied the highest proportion of male cultivators. Chen Hao was one of them. "I'm not a savior, and I'm not a casual person." After the middle-aged man left, Chen Hao thought to himself. In the face of the middle-aged man's temptation, a casual person would not be able to resist. However, Chen Hao did not feel anything this time. Because, even if those people were more outstanding and beautiful than Qin Shaoqing, Chen Hao did not feel anything. He did not know them at all. How could he feel anything? Moreover, although they had the same fate as Qin Shaoqing, he was not a savior. He saved Qin Shaoqing because of fate. It could be considered a coincidence or Qin Shaoqing's luck. Of course, it could also be considered Chen Hao's luck. Just like what Old God said, Chen Hao had picked up a treasure by saving Qin Shaoqing. This was because even brainwashing could not hide her true self. This was not something an ordinary person could do. Qin Shaoqing had contributed greatly to Chen Hao's success in breaking through the first step of his inner demons. Similarly, Chen Hao and Qin Xiaoqing's soul and flesh had merged and obtained her primordial Yin. The harvest was not small. The reason why Chen Hao got Qin Shaoqing out of the mind space after hearing the knock on the door was that he could not take Qin Shaoqing away in this way for the time being. This was also a decision he had made after careful consideration. After all, if he took Qin Shaoqing away silently, the only excuse would be that he had swallowed Qin Shaoqing and killed her. However, Qin Shaoqing was a mortal core cultivated by the Fan family. How could she not have a longevity token? Although they had come into contact with the soul slave contract, they still knew whether Qin Shaoqing was alive or dead. If Chen Hao took Chen Xiaoqing away, the middle-aged heavenly immortal master would definitely be able to guess that Chen Hao had the ability to keep living people. This was an ability that only the masters of the Grand Mist Supremacy realm had. Once it was exposed, what would happen? It could be said that until now, Chen Hao had not told anyone about this secret. Even Guanu's situation, Long Ting and Long Yi could only guess at most. They could not be sure. Therefore, they could only keep it for the time being. For a whole day and night, Chen Xiaoqing, who was curled up in the quilt, was secretly infused with energy by Chen Hao. She finally woke up slowly. She felt endless comfort all over her body. Whether it was her soul, her state of mind, or her physical body, Chen Xiaoqing felt that she had far surpassed her previous peak state. What surprised her even more was that this full state clearly told her that the barrier that had imprisoned her for nearly 10 years and could not touch had a huge loosening at this moment. She had a feeling that now, as long as she activated her essence, qi, and spirit, she could trigger the divine punishment and pass it without any suspense, stepping into the Earth's celestial stage. All of this was like a dream. In the warm and soft quilt, she felt that her body was naked. Thinking that she fell asleep because she was too tired, although Chen Xiaoqing enjoyed this feeling very much, she still opened her eyes and released her spirit. Suddenly, she sensed Chen Hao in the living room. A blush appeared on her pretty face, and she even bloomed with the brilliance of reaching the true balance of yin and yang after being nourished. She quickly put on her clothes, and her full breasts rose and fell violently. She took a deep breath and walked out of the bedroom. Master, Chen Xiaoqing obediently came to Chen Hao's side, bowed to him, and whispered in a low voice. You're awake? You don't have to do these red tape in the future. Yes, master. Chen Xiaoqing obediently picked up the wine bottle on the tea table. After filling Chen Hao's empty wine glass, she went directly behind Chen Hao and massaged Chen Hao like a little maidservant of a big family. Do you often do this? Feeling Chen Xiaoqing's skillful and comfortable technique, Chen Hao frowned slightly and asked, Master, Xiaoqing has been trained since childhood. However, I have never served any man. Master, Xiaoqing was the first person I served. Chen Xiaoqing, who was intelligent, said hurriedly. Then what else can you do? As long as master wants, Xiaoqing should be able to, hee. Then give me a full service. It's rare for me to have free time, so I'll enjoy life properly. Chen Hao said comfortably as he felt Chen Xiaoqing's nimble little hands. The knot in his heart for Chen Xiaoqing had been untied. Why would this girl have any scruples? This was his first female subordinate, a maidservant. The other girls were all high and mighty. How could they be as obedient as Chen Xiaoqing? Also, they couldn't be as obedient as Chen Xiaoqing. If he wanted the other girls to let go of their reservations and reach Chen Xiaoqing's level, he still had a long way to go. Chapter 675. Chi. The densely packed aircraft of the human clan quickly traveled through the pitch-black chaotic space. Suddenly, one after another, the aircraft opened their barriers, allowing the cultivators inside the aircraft to see the scene outside for the first time. The space aircraft with their own independent space also removed the ceiling restrictions on their own independent space. Beep beep beep. Everyone, we have arrived at the entrance of the primitive mystic realm. The human clan will occupy the 50 entrances. Once again, we must be united within the human clan. Try to avoid killing and fighting. If you can settle it when you return, then do so. This time, the cultivators of the other 9 clans are extremely powerful. They are our real opponents. Everyone, please be in your best condition and be prepared. In at most 20 days, the entrance will open. Now, you can feel the origin energy outside the primitive mystic realm. This is a good opportunity to cultivate. In the cabin, in the VIP area, in every room, and in the cultivation room, a voice rang out. Have we arrived? Chen Hao, who was refreshed, slowly opened his eyes. Master! Chen Xiaoqing also came out from her cultivation state. Her face was rosy and she was full of energy. A dense fluctuation was naturally emitted from her body. It was obvious that her essence, qi, and spirit had become more vigorous in the past 9 days. If she hadn't been in the aircraft, she would have triggered the divine punishment and stepped into the Earth's celestial stage. This was because she had only enjoyed it once in the past 9 days. If she could have sex with Chen Hao, the effect would be even more exaggerated. It was a pity that her master was not the kind of person who indulged in sex. He also told her that he was thinking for her. "You can stay in the room. I will go out and take a look. If I don't come back, I will come back after the trial in the primitive mystic realm ends." "Master, be careful." Chen Hao stretched out his hand and patted Chen Xiaoqing's head. He turned around and walked out of the cultivation room. Chen Xiaoqing stared at Chen Hao's back as he left. The moment the door closed, she rubbed the part of her head that Chen Hao had touched. A sweet smile that had never appeared before appeared on her face. It was a smile of happiness that came from the bottom of her heart. Becoming a servant from a human core cultivator was something that she did not even dare to think about. Furthermore, her master treated her so well. More importantly, her master was so powerful. "Hello, Brother Chen." "Greetings, Brother Chen." "Brother Chen, you are truly amazing." "What a strong aura." "Damn it, when we came in, he must have hidden his aura. I, as the captain, am nothing in front of him." When Chen Hao entered the VIP cabin, there were only about 200 cultivators who could afford it. They all greeted Chen Hao warmly. Chen Hao, who had booked a top-notch room, could use the VIP cabin for free. It was impossible to see the outside from inside the room. Only those in the VIP cabins or the normal cabins could see and sense the primal mystic realm aura that was purposely released by the restrictions of the aircraft. Although Chen Hao wasn't an arrogant person, he couldn't stand being treated with too much enthusiasm. Especially when more than 200 people were looking at him at the same time, as if they wanted to make friends with him. Chen Hao didn't want to be annoyed by such meaningless enthusiasm. Hence, he only nodded his head slightly. His pace was neither fast nor slow, but he didn't slow down at all. He didn't reject people, but he didn't allow people to get close to him easily either. Seeing Chen Hao like this, the cultivators who wanted to get close to him all sat down tactfully. After sitting down cross-legged on an empty seat, Chen Hao looked outside the aircraft. His powerful soul consciousness also caught a trace of aura that entered the aircraft and blended it into the endless chaotic space. This aura. In just an instant, Chen Hao was shocked. The pitch-black chaotic space roiled and surged like dark clouds, and it was filled with a heavy and ancient aura. Various quintessence energies that seemed like the remnants of ancient times were contained within it, but what truly surprised Chen Hao was the aura of destruction contained within it. Boom, boom, boom. In that instant, Chen Hao seemed to see millions upon millions of stars being destroyed. The endless universe began to crumble as the stars were destroyed. Destruction, true destruction. Destruction that no one in heaven and earth could stop. Although the destructive aura was very weak, it still set off huge waves in Chen Hao's mind. The destruction sword principle of the secular sword principle was one of the earliest and strongest sword principle elements that Chen Hao had mastered. However, at this moment, in front of this weak destructive aura, Chen Hao felt that the aura of his destruction sword principle was the difference between charcoal and diamond. They were both elements, but they were worlds apart. This is real destruction, the destruction that causes the collapse of the universe. Chen Hao knew how the primitive secret area was formed. It was the essence left behind after the collapse of a universe. This was the only trace of their existence left behind by countless powerful figures in the universe. The higher the level of the primitive secret area, the more powerful the universe was before it collapsed. The primitive secret area of the Earth's celestial realm was the inheritance that the ancient powerful figures of the universe left behind for the cultivators of the Earth's celestial realm. The so-called opening of the primitive secret area was when the destructive aura that caused the collapse of the universe dissipated after a long period of time and could no longer affect the cultivators. That was when it opened. In fact, at this moment, only 1 in a billion cultivators could capture the destructive aura. Only those who had comprehended the mystery of destruction would be more sensitive to it. It's a pity that I came too late. If I had come earlier, the destructive aura would have been stronger and I would have gained more. However, this is also a rare opportunity. Hiss. Chen Hao's mind directly fused into the boundless chaotic space. He captured every single strand of destructive aura that he could capture and immersed himself in comprehending. Unlike Chen Hao, the vast majority of cultivators were also inexplicably excited after immersing themselves in the comprehension. This was because the aircraft had only released a trace of the chaotic space's aura. Even if their sole perception could follow this trace of aura into the chaotic space, it was still extremely limited. Even so, many cultivators could feel the ancient origin energy. Although it was very weak, the origin energy's realm was very high. Even the energy level of a middle-grade origin stone could not be compared to it. This was only the outside of the primitive secret area, and it was already so powerful. What would happen after they entered? Just thinking about it made them excited. Whoosh, 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 the human army was tens of millions of miles long. Gradually, the distance between the human army and the human army became longer and longer. Starting from the army at the rear, the human army stopped first. After about 1 hour, another one stopped. Then, the human army at the front stopped as well. This also meant that the human tribe army was all in place. They occupied almost 1/10 of the surrounding area of the primitive secret area. This was the area that the higher-ups of the 10 galaxies had agreed on beforehand. Of course, the actual size of the space inside the primitive secret area could not be measured by the size of the chaotic space. This was because it was a collapsing universe. There was an independent space order and even time order. As for the specifics, they would only know after entering the primitive secret area. Time passed. When Chen Hao felt that the destructive aura was getting weaker and the origin energy was getting stronger, he knew that the primitive secret area that the entire cultivation world was looking forward to was about to open. Phew! Chen Hao let out a long sigh. The destructive aura in his eyes flashed and disappeared. Although the 20 days of comprehension did not allow Chen Hao's destructive will to achieve a breakthrough, it clearly pointed out the direction that Chen Hao had to work hard on from now on. I can't wait. I, Lu Qianye, will make the genius cultivators of the 10 galaxies tremble in fear. The Protoss, Lu Qianye, was ranked number 1 among the Protoss in the human tribe statistics. He had a combat power of 9,900,000. His eyes were filled with excitement, desire, and passion. The Protoss were born with a divine body. They were the most powerful race in the 10 galaxies. Countless human cultivators in the vast universe galaxy dreamed of having an immortal body. Any newborn Protoss would have this body. The strength of their bodies was something that the 9 great races could never hope to compare with. Their weakness was that the God race had a congenital flaw in their perception. They were basically unable to control any supernatural powers or laws. They only had skills to temper their true essence. In battle, they relied entirely on their physical strength and true essence, as well as the most basic and simplest combat skills. If it were not for this flaw, the Protoss would be invincible. They would have conquered the entire universe a long time ago. I want to see who can compete with me in the primitive secret area. The number 1 expert of the Zerg, Morris, had a boundless vitality. He had a human body, but he had 9 demonic heads. The middle head was that of an extremely beautiful human woman, but the other 8 heads that spread out like sunflowers were snake heads. It looked very strange. But Morris's name shocked the cultivators who entered the primitive secret area more than Lu Qianye of the Protoss. Her combat power was one of the only 3 that had a full score. 10 million. Those who block me will die. My fortune, luck, and strength will definitely be the greatest. The top powerhouses of the top 10 galaxies all let out their strongest voices when they sensed that the primitive mystic realm was about to open. At the same time, the eyes of countless powerful cultivators were burning with excitement. Those who knew that they were weak did not have the heart to compete. But they were also excited. The primitive secret area was filled with treasures. As long as their luck was not too bad, they would be able to gain something. Even if they could only hide in a corner to cultivate, it would be worth it. How could they not be excited? Chi 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 chi. Has it opened? It has already opened. Beep, beep, beep. Everyone, the primitive secret area is officially open. The flying devices are open. Prepare to enter. I hope that all of you will have a good harvest. Amazing harvest! When the pitch-black chaotic space suddenly blossomed with an extremely bright light, illuminating the entire chaotic space, the cultivators in the aircraft shouted excitedly. Along with the sound coming from the aircraft, the cultivators activated their extremely powerful protective aura chi one after another. Chapter 676. Everyone, don't panic. Go out in groups. Boom. The team leader was still standing at the door to maintain order. As the door of the aircraft opened, the cultivators who had been impatient for a long time turned into streams of light and flew out one by one according to their serial number. Every cultivator who rushed out immediately released a powerful protective aura around their bodies and rushed towards the bright light. The heavenly immortal masters and attendants of the aircraft also arrived at the entrance. As they watched the cultivators quickly leave and rush towards the bright light, these heavenly immortal masters knew that these disciples might be like this light, blooming with a dazzling radiance. But some of them were like moths flying into a flame, never to return to vast universe galaxy again. Master Chen Xiaoqing's petite figure quickly rushed over and saw Chen Hao, who was walking towards the door from the VIP area. Wait for me to come back. But Chen Xiaoqing nodded vigorously. Looking at the smiling Chen Hao full of confidence, her eyes flashed with an inexplicable impulse, but she forcibly suppressed it. She could only stare at Chen Hao rushing out of the aircraft, but Chen Hao did not directly rush towards the bright light. Instead, he quickly rushed towards a distant aircraft marked East Flow City No. 1 in the chaotic space. Master is meeting up with the mistress. Seeing this scene, Chen Xiaoqing thought to herself. Thinking of Chen Hao and Long Ting, she felt more and more that she was extremely lucky to be able to become Chen Hao's servant. With her talent and appearance, being able to be chosen by Chen Hao was like a pie falling from the sky. Because she deeply knew how outstanding her mistresses were, including Helian Wuzi and the others. Even though she didn't know their names, because she had seen everything in Chen Hao's demonic repellent realm without a sound, Brother Hao, whoosh. Two beautiful figures met up with Chen Hao at an astonishing speed. Long Ting was still passionate and did not know how to be reserved. She called out Brother Hao loudly and with sincere feelings. This wasn't something that a little girl like Chen Hao could accomplish. She'd only simplified the way she addressed Chen Hao to the word, Hao, but the feelings it contained weren't inferior to Long Ting in the slightest. It was just that everyone had different ways of expressing themselves. Of course, this wasn't a matter of age. The most important thing was that Chen Shui was really Chen Hao's elder sister. Hee. Chen Hao revealed a smile, ignoring the gazes of the cultivators in the distance. In truth, there were not many people who were paying attention to him. Basically, everyone who came out had already rushed into the light. Only those who cared about Chen Hao, Long Ting, and Chen Shui would notice it. For example, Division Master Chen Lin, the Pan-East current who had basically established a relationship with Chen Lin, and Long Ting's good friends such as Mo Weiwei, Duan Rentian, Zhong Yangming, and Go Daoqian. At the same time, he held the two women's small hands in each hand. With a key sound, the three of them rushed into the bright light at the same time. Primitive mystic realm. Grandpa, I'm here. Pa. What made Chen Shui and Long Ting frown was that the moment they entered the light, Chen Hao actually shouted loudly and even called himself Grandpa. Was he that excited? Open for me. In the light, a bright sword light suddenly shone from between Chen Hao's eyebrows. The space barrier was directly torn apart. The bright light disappeared, and the three of them entered the legendary primitive mystic realm at the same time. What dense and pure origin energy! Long Ting cried out in surprise. Chen Shui also revealed an expression of surprise and joy. As expected of the legendary primitive mystic realm. Chen Hao's eyes were also burning. He took a deep breath and immediately said, "Something's not right. What's wrong?" The two women looked at Chen Hao at the same time. There's actually no cultivator within a radius of 100,000 miles, Brother Hao. Are you sure? Long Ting asked in surprise. Indeed, there's no one within 150,000 miles. At this moment, Chen Shui also frowned and said, Xiao Shui, your sensing range. Are you kidding? Hearing Chen Shui's words, Long Ting turned to look at Chen Shui and was even more surprised. Not only Long Ting, but even Chen Hao looked at Chen Shui strangely. Of course. Chen Shui said proudly. Originally, her sensing ability had always been her advantage. However, after meeting a freak like Chen Hao, she did not feel proud at all. Especially later, the gap between her and Chen Hao grew larger. However, in these few years after being under house arrest by the Divine Temple, her sensing ability had a miraculous explosion. Just like Chen Hao's fiery golden eyes, it had a shocking increase. Moreover, at this moment, looking at Chen Hao's eyes, Chen Shui finally felt the same feeling she had when she first met Chen Hao. She was very happy and said, "This is a special ability that I obtained by accident." You actually obtained a special ability too. As expected of my wife, Chen Hao. Amazing, amazing. Moi. Chen Hao held Chen Shui's beautiful face, and as fast as lightning in front of Long Ting, he smacked his lips and kissed her cherry lips. Chen Shui, who was suddenly attacked, screamed and pushed Chen Hao away. With a red face, she glared at Chen Hao angrily. "Ha, what about me?" Chen Shui was embarrassed, but when Long Ting saw this scene, she directly pouted her little mouth and made a gesture of waiting for a kiss, causing Chen Shui to collapse, and black lines to appear on her forehead. Moi. Chen Hao did not say anything and immediately added, although this guy was once again defeated by Long Ting, he had to admit that he liked it. Such thick skin. Chen Shui glared at Long Ting and spat out 4 words. Long Ting laughed and did not say anything. What special ability did you obtain? Chen Shui looked at Chen Hao and asked. What? Did I obtain any special ability? A special ability is something that can only be obtained by chance. I did not obtain it. If you did not obtain it, why did you say, also, just now? A slip of the tongue. It was definitely a slip of the tongue. Alright. There are no cultivators within a radius of 150,000 miles. This means that the primitive mystic realm is extremely terrifying. After all, when we entered the chaotic space, the distance between us and other cultivators was only about 3,000 meters. Furthermore, 150,000 miles might not be the limit. Chen Hao changed the topic. He could not help but admire Chen Shui's observation skills. He had only said the word, also, and she had noticed it. However, this special ability was something that Chen Hao could not say even if he was beaten to death. If the two girls knew that he could see their naked bodies at any time, wouldn't that be terrible? That's right. If there is no one within a radius of 5 million miles, then we don't have to be team leaders anymore. Let me try sending a message. As a team leader, she was different from Chen Hao. Although the token had fused with her soul, she could still sense it and use the team leader's summoning token to send a message. However, the range was only 1 million miles. I don't think it's going to work. That Wang Lin must have sent a message when he entered. The range of the primitive mystic realm is 50 million miles. Until now, we have not received any message from him. This can only mean that the spatial laws of the primitive mystic realm are beyond our knowledge. Indeed, I can't sense any waves. Long Ting said in shock. Very good. This way, you don't have to be a team leader anymore. The two of you will each take one side and I will be in the middle. I have a miniature aircraft. I guarantee that there won't be any problems within 50,000 miles. If you encounter any problems, fly in ends, shape and I will rush over. Is that okay? Chen Hao was extremely shocked. Similarly, he was happy to see such a situation. Although he was with the two girls, he went on an adventure alone. It was not right after all. Furthermore, Chen Hao did not want the two girls to lead a group of people under the leadership of Wang Lin, who obviously had ulterior motives towards Long Ting. The appearance of such an unimaginable situation immediately resolved Chen Hao's concerns. Alright. The two girls said excitedly. However, Brother Hao, isn't the range of your miniature aircraft even further? It's also faster and we can cover a larger area. Kiki, not at the moment. Xiaoji's mission is to find my two masters and Xiao Wu. Chen Hao said with a smile. Ah, such a large area. They are not even in the same army as us. Don't worry, we know which army they are in. Although they are definitely very far away, with the speed of the aircraft, it won't take much time. It won't be difficult to find them. Initially, I only wanted to take the two masters. Now that your team leader positions are useless, why don't we all go together? I'm not worried. Alright, you can go now. There were many people who were as excited as Chen Hao and the other two. This was because they had entered the primitive mystic realm from around the same place. However, after entering, they could not sense anyone's aura. Naturally, they could guess what was going on. Large meant that as long as they were careful, they would not encounter enemies from the other 9 galaxies. It was very suitable for cultivation. They might even be able to obtain some Dharma treasures, heavenly spiritual items, or inheritances without anyone noticing. With the danger reduced, who would be willing to follow a large team and be governed by others? Furthermore, it might not be evenly distributed, only some officials, who wanted to do big things and reap more rewards with the strength of a team were unhappy. For example, Chen Lin. Master. Itoda, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise, while Chen Hao was flying fast, directly appeared beside Chen Hao and shouted excitedly. Go and train alone. Don't go too far. Go, yes, master. Itoda and the 2 ancient mythical beasts said excitedly. After that, they turned into 3 streams of light and left quickly. After the man and the 2 beasts left, a stream of light flashed and Huaxiao No. 1 microaircraft appeared in front of Chen Hao. Xiaoji, can you confirm their auras? Yes, master. Good, you know which army they are in. You also know the order of the 50 entrances. As for the specific distance, you will have to rely on yourself. I will basically follow this route and come back to me after completing the mission. Yes, master, I promise to complete the mission. The miniature aircraft directly turned into a stream of light, and then the aura shield disappeared. Chapter 677. The Primal Mystic Realm. Bang. Chen Hao's aura surged outwards. His essence, energy, and soul shot into the skies. A heart-shaking pressure spread outwards. Heaven and earth as me and I as heaven and earth state is actually completely suppressed here. I can't do that at all. Chen Hao stared at the vast and boundless space of the primal mystic realm. He could clearly feel an invisible pressure pressing down on his body. It was this pressure that bound down Chen Hao's essence, energy, and mind, causing him to be unable to enter the state of I am the heavens and earth, I am the heavens and earth, that he had achieved back at Vast Universe Star. The reason was simple. The source heavenly Tao laws contained here had completely surpassed the limits of Chen Hao's comprehension of his own boundary. In truth, this sort of state could only be entered when one's own boundary was at the state of perfection. On Vast Universe Star, Chen Hao had indeed reached the state of perfection. But in this primal mystic realm, he had not reached the state of perfection. What did this mean? The heavenly Tao laws in the primal mystic realm were even stronger than on Vast Universe Star. Just cultivating here can benefit me greatly. Forget it. How can I return empty-handed from a mountain of treasures? Thinking of this, Chen Hao suppressed his impulse to stop and cultivate. He descended into the depths of the forest that was filled with an ancient aura. His powerful soul sense spread outwards, carefully sensing every blade of grass, every tree, every rock, and every grain of sand. He quickly walked towards the depths where the aura was thicker. Master, there are no treasures within 10,000 miles. As for lucky chances and inheritances, I cannot sense them. At this time, the treasure-hunting sword spirit suddenly said, Oh, if that's the case, then let's go deeper. Chen Hao didn't doubt the treasure-hunting sword's words at all. If the treasure-hunting sword spirit couldn't sense anything, then even if there were treasures, he wouldn't be able to sense them either. As for lucky chances and inheritances, they were completely dependent on destiny. They were things that could only be chanced upon and not sought. They weren't things that one could find just by looking carefully. So, Chen Hao decisively sped up. However, the aura around his body was released without the slightest restraint. His essence, energy, spirit, will, soul energy, and comprehension towards the laws of the Heaven Tao weren't held back in the slightest. This was because he knew that lucky chances and inheritances depended on destiny and one's own conditions. Only when one's conditions were met could they be opened. For hours later, "Treasure Hunter, is there anything wrong with your senses?" "There won't be any problems." "Don't worry, Master, that's strange. It's been a full 4 hours. Let alone an ancient spiritual treasure, I haven't even seen a spiritual treasure of heaven and earth. This doesn't make sense. According to the records, there are treasures everywhere. You can even step on a spiritual treasure of heaven and earth. This? Master, I really didn't sense anything." Chi. At this moment, Chen Hao suddenly looked up at the void. To his surprise, a miniature aircraft was flying over at lightning speed. What happened? Chen Hao was shocked. It had only been 4 hours. He was clear about the speed of the miniature aircraft. No matter how fast it couldn't be this fast, right? How could he have completed the mission and returned? Beep beep beep. Master, this is a star fragment. It's in the shape of a sheet, and it's about 90 million kilometers long. Other than the master and the 2 mistresses, there are no other life forms in the fragment. What? Are you sure? Xiaoji No. 1's words caused Chen Hao's eyes to widen in surprise. Master, I returned after a week. I'm sure. How could this be? Chen Hao frowned. Such a situation was not recorded in the records of the primitive secret realm. No matter what level the primitive secret realm was at, there was no such thing. He, Qin Shui, and Long Ting had entered hand in hand and appeared on a star fragment. Did this mean that as long as they entered alone, they would appear on an independent star fragment? There were 500 million cultivators in the human race alone. If the other 9 galaxies and some smaller galaxies were included, there would be a total of 6 billion cultivators. How many star fragments would that require? Old God, are you sure about this situation? I'm not sure. However, I'm sure that not only is the law of space out of the ordinary, but the law of time is also different. What do you mean? Such a huge space is at least billions of times larger than the size of the chaotic space. This situation definitely exceeds the limit of the law of time in the outside world. In other words, there needs to be a stronger law of time in order to stabilize this space. I estimate it's at least 100 times. 100 years here is at most a year in the outside world. Doesn't this mean we have to stay here for 500 to 600 years? Chen Hao was shocked. The opening time of the primitive secret realm, no matter what level it was usually 5 to 6 years. If it was 100, it would be 500 to 600 years. Master, I said at least, based on 5 years, 500 years is at least, 1,000 years is very likely, and even 2,000 years is not surprising. The law of space here is too strong. Based on the law of space, it shouldn't be just the primitive secret realm of the Earth's celestial realm. I don't understand it either, Old God said. Even though Old God had been through many generations of masters, and each of them was the strongest in their own universe, every space civilization had its own uniqueness and uniqueness. However, Master, this is just a fragment of a planet. Other than cultivation, there is not much to gain from it. I think we should leave immediately and head for the deeper regions where the energy is thicker. At least we need to go to the ruins of ancient planets, sects, and cities to reap the rewards. While most people are still confused about the situation, we should make the first move and buy ourselves some time. Old God sighed and said, However, Master, this is just a fragment of a planet. All right. Chen Hao directly entered the miniature aircraft. There's no response within 50 million miles. Brother Moling also didn't send any message. Is the law of space here so terrifying? Gazing at the endless barren mountains and forests, Chen Lin and Pan Eastward Current had been flying for a full 6 hours. Moreover, they were flying at an extremely fast speed. Their purpose was to sense the cultivators through the master token. However, in these 6 hours, he had flown for more than 300 million miles. In addition to the 50 million sensing range of the master token, he did not detect any fluctuations. This made him feel truly horrified. Brother Chen Lin, in this case, let's train alone. Pan Dong Lu did not feel much about this. Originally, she was just a captain. If she could lead the team, she might gain more and earn fame. However, if she could not lead the team and train alone, it was not necessarily bad. Moreover, it was not bad to be alone with Chen Lin. The situation is a bit strange. The law of space here is a bit too terrifying. I remember that our Temple Hall Master once said that when the law of space exceeds a certain range, there must be a matching law of time. It is precisely because of this that our storage magic treasures have always been greatly restricted. Chapter 678. Chen Hao drove the aircraft and took Itoda, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise into his mind in a few minutes. He then took Chen Shui and Long Ting, who were only tens of thousands of miles away, into the aircraft. The two girls were shocked when they heard Chen Hao's explanation. Our aircraft speed is at least 20 times faster than an ordinary Earth Immortal. If we're further away, we don't need to rest. Our advantage is even greater. I don't know if the others have miniature aircraft. Even if they do, there won't be many of them. This is our biggest advantage. Are we still going to pick them up? Long Ting asked. Let's do it. However, the space law here is too terrifying. It'll take a long time to pick them up. Xiao Ji, connect to the aura outside. Yes, Master. We'll cultivate in the aircraft. We can travel and cultivate at the same time. I think anyone who can make it out of the primitive mystic realm alive will have the ability to fight above their level. At least, it won't be a problem for them to fight above their level. Why? Long Ting and Chen Shui frowned when they heard Chen Hao's words. Obviously, they did not understand. That's because the laws of time and the laws of heaven here have higher requirements for cultivators of the same cultivation level. I've always been at the peak of my cultivation level, but it's no longer the case here. Moreover, I'm afraid we'll have to stay here for hundreds of years. You can sense it? Chen Shui stared at Chen Hao and asked. I've always been in the state of, I am heaven and earth, I am man and earth. Do you think I can sense it? Xiao Ji, let's go. Don't waste time. Go in this direction and find the nearest star fragment. Chen Hao ordered as he spoke. The miniature aircraft turned into a ray of light and flew toward the void at an alarming speed. It was impossible to tear space apart and fly in the primitive mystic realm. This was because this was the space left behind by the collapse of the universe. The real universe no longer existed. This was an independent space left behind by the original universe. However, at this moment, the aircraft did not fly towards the center of the primitive secret realm where the aura was thicker. Instead, it flew to one side. According to Old God, they had to find the nearest star fragment and sense a cultivator. From there, they could analyze how terrifying the space order in the primitive secret realm was. 3 days later, what shocked Chen Hao and the other two was that even with the speed of the aircraft, it took them 3 whole days to encounter the first star fragment. However, there were no longer any cultivators on the star fragment. This star fragment is about the same size as the one we had. If a cultivator was teleported here in 3 days, they would have discovered this star fragment and gone deeper. When we entered the primal mystic realm, the closest flying device was only about 3,000 meters away. We actually took 3 days. Master, we've flown a distance of 2,714,538,792 billion kilometers. Outside the primitive secret realm, the ratio is 90. 48546,264 billion. 1. Little Wisdom 1 immediately gave the accurate data. It's about the same as what I guessed. The time order here is roughly between 1, 101, 200. 100 times the law of time can barely withstand such a powerful law of space. 150 times is the most suitable. 200 times a bit higher is also possible. Hee master, under such a law of time, our advantage is even more obvious. You can leisurely travel while cultivating. I'm just afraid that you won't be able to bear the loneliness. At this time, old God spoke in Qinhao's mind. Xiao Shui, Sister Ting, I can tell you with certainty that we'll be staying here for 500 to 600 years or even 1,000 years. Xiao Shui, which army are they in? Let's determine the general direction and start looking for them. Qinhao asked. Qinhao knew the order of the human army's arrival. He also knew that Venerable Immortal Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei were in the Ying Planet Army. However, only Chen Shui knew where Helian Wuzi, Xia Yu, Tantai Lian, and the Lung sisters were. After Chen Shui told him which army they were in, Qinhao directly transmitted the location information to Little Wisdom Number 1. Little Wisdom Number 1 calculated the best route with the least time according to the expansion of space. However, due to the limitations of the known conditions, Little Wisdom Number 1 could not calculate the exact time, mainly because it could not determine the specific distance between the armies. However, according to the order of their flying machines in the human army and the time they flew after sensing the aura of the primitive secret realm, it could roughly calculate a number. The vague conclusion was that it would take about 30 years, with no more than 5 years. 35 years. That's so long. Qinhao frowned slightly and muttered, in that case, it's better to refine some flying machines. Refine flying machines? Yes, it doesn't take much time to refine a flying machine. The only thing missing is the materials. It shouldn't be difficult to find the materials in the primitive secret realm, but even if there are materials, they haven't been purified. The time it will take. Long Ting was puzzled. You don't have to worry about this. Purification and refining are very simple to me. It's settled then. All right, the two of you just have to cultivate. Leave the rest to me. Little Wisdom, let's go. Go straight in. Since we're going to refine it, find some decent materials. Yes, Master. But can we change Little Wisdom's materials? Qinhao was slightly shocked. He did not expect Little Wisdom Number 1 to have such thoughts. Furthermore, its mechanical voice made Qinhao feel a sense of emotion. Little Wisdom wants to be Master's strongest assistant. Cough cough. All right. Let's go. Yes, Master. Thank you, Master. Outside the primitive secret realm, the largest flying machine of the human clan was shining with dazzling light at this moment. Mysterious runes were emitting invisible waves that seemed to penetrate the endless chaotic space and even seeped into the primitive secret realm. The aura of this flying machine had exceeded the category of a divine weapon. Especially the ancient aura that it contained, it was even more shocking. Even an old god would be shocked if he saw it. In the flying machine, there were almost 1,000 masters of the Grand Mist Supremacy realm maintaining the operation of the flying machine. To be exact, this was not a flying machine but an ancient spiritual treasure. It was also one of the strongest treasures of the human race. This was the existence that forcefully connected the top 10 commanders of the human race in the primitive secret realm to the second world. It was also the key to the second world's live broadcast of the cultivators in the primitive secret realm. That's strange. It's already been 6 hours. Why is there no news at all? An elder who was watching the huge screen frowned and said, It's indeed strange. 500 million cultivators entered the primitive secret realm filled with treasures. Under normal circumstances, they should have at least sent back some information. It's impossible for there to be no news after such a long time. Could it be that the primitive secret realm is too barren and the spiritual items they obtained are not enough for the token to collect information? That could be. But it's here. Just as the few elders were feeling strange and confused, a name flashed with a resplendent light on the huge screen. There was an additional line in the Primal Mystic Realm's information column. Obtained an ancient treasure sword, supreme grade spirit treasure grade. After the message, the image of the sword was displayed. But it was just a basic picture. Wow. Bai Yunfei obtained a Supreme Soul artifact. No wonder he's in the top 3 of the 10 commanders, he's the first to get it. Amazing. If he didn't come, then so be it. He got a Supreme Soul artifact. This is an ancient spiritual treasure. It's definitely much stronger than the average Supreme Soul artifact. That's for sure. Looks like the primitive secret realm isn't as bad as we thought. They probably didn't get anything good after entering. Almost at the same time, the various alliances in the second world received the news. The first person to eat the crab was the third commander of the primitive secret realm, Bai Yunfei. And after he obtained the treasure, he immediately rose to first place. 10 contribution points for the human race. The leaderboard was no longer a leaderboard for combat strength. It was a leaderboard for contribution points. However, neither the senior members of the Divine Palace nor the cultivators in the Second World knew that 420 hours had passed in the primitive mystic realm during the 6 hours they had been waiting. In other words, 35 days had passed in the primitive mystic realm. The time ratio was 1:140. With Bai Yunfei being the first to eat the crab, everyone thought that there would be more and more people who would be able to eat the crab. In a short amount of time, the leaderboard would change drastically. But, to everyone's surprise, it wasn't until an hour later that the other commander finally gained something. However, he only gained 1 human race contribution point and a spiritual medicine. Over the next 3 days, the intervals between them varied, but it was still the commander or deputy commander who obtained them. This situation made the top echelons of the human temple feel extremely strange, but there was another possibility. After 10 consecutive days of this situation, and after receiving the same information from the other 9 star systems, they confirmed the possibility that there was absolutely no division commander or deputy division commander around any of the core commanders and deputy core commanders. In other words, the laws of space in the primitive secret realm were beyond imagination. What did this mean? This meant that the laws of time had changed. This meant that the laws of space and the origin energy were stronger than the laws of space. This meant that any cultivator who entered the primitive secret realm would be able to benefit from it. This caused the entire world of cultivation to explode. The cultivators of the other 10 galaxies, including the celestial immortals and Daoist Jingxian, were all envious. Chapter 679. Furthermore, it was certain that the army commanders and deputy commanders were not the only ones who had obtained treasures and elixirs. However, due to the unimaginable vastness of the space rules, the information of the cultivators who had obtained treasures was temporarily stored and could not be transmitted to the outside world. Once the army commanders, division commanders, regiment commanders, senior team leaders, small team leaders, and soldiers appeared in the area covered by the tokens, it would definitely be the time when the information would explode. Furthermore, the death rate of the cultivators who entered the primitive mystic realm this time would definitely be lower than before. Because the space was huge. In reality, 1 month had passed in the real world, 10 months had passed in the second world, and almost 12 years had passed in the primitive mystic realm. The change in the ranking on the pagoda tablet directly exploded. Instantly, rays of light shone. At least 1,000 cultivators' names shone with golden light. It was obvious that an army commander had met a division commander, and the division commander had met a regiment commander, and the regiment commander had met many senior team leaders, and so on. This so-called meeting was not a meeting, but the information that was originally stored in the area covered by the tokens was transmitted to the outside world at the same time. After this explosion, it calmed down, but the frequency of changes had obviously increased. Furthermore, as time passed, the explosions continued. However, everyone who was paying attention to Chen Hao and Long Ting was puzzled. Because their names had been dropping and until now, they had not obtained any information. This was very illogical. The East Stream division that the two of them belonged to, Division Master Chen Lin, as well as many cultivators, had already spread the information through their division commander Moling Takshu. With Chen Hao's strength, how could he not have received it? However, he did not obtain any information, and so did Long Ting. No matter what, They would never have thought that it was not that the two of them did not obtain any information, but the two of them had gone too far in than the other cultivators. The distance was too great, and the information could not be transmitted to the higher-ups at all. In the blink of an eye, 12 years had passed in the primitive mystic realm. In the endless void, a graceful figure wearing a loose Daoist robe was rapidly flying towards the depths where the aura was even thicker. On the left chest of the Daoist robe was the insignia of a disciple of the divine temple. Her cultivation level was only at the peak of the Earth's celestial stage. Her appearance was above average, but her cold eyes still exuded a charm that made one's heart pound. However, anyone who saw her would know that she had changed her appearance and aura slightly. This young girl was none other than Hellion Wuxi. I've already been here for 12 years. I wonder how much time has passed in the outside world. According to the records, the primal mystic realm has at most 6 years, which means that the laws of time here have changed. How much has it changed? Hellion Wuxi thought to herself as she flew quickly. Not long after entering the primitive mystic realm, she realized that the space here was so big that it was completely beyond her imagination. Until now, it had been a full 12 years. Even though she had sensed the presence of cultivators through the deputy leader's token, she did not stop walking. She, who had hidden her real body, was able to avoid leading the group. Naturally, she would not take the initiative to look for trouble. My strength has more than doubled, but I still can't reach the medium stage of the Earth's celestial stage. This is a good thing. Even if Hellion Wuxi relied on her own thinking, she knew that this was a good thing. Being able to increase her power but not her realm would undoubtedly increase her potential. Moreover, the few years of house arrest had more or less been a little excessive. Now, under such a space-time law, it was undoubtedly the time for her to rebuild her foundation. I wonder how he's doing now. Sister Xue should be with him. In these 12 years, as long as she was hurrying, Hellion Wuxi would think of Chen Hao and Chen Xue, who might be training with Chen Hao. It was impossible to say that she was not envious and jealous. However, this was the arrangement of the divine temple. She could only say that Chen Xue was lucky. If the laws of space here were not so strong, maybe he would come to find me. But now, Hellion Wuxi pouted. All of a sudden, what made Hellion Wuxi surprised was that a profound fluctuation actually appeared soundlessly in front of her left. It was only 1,000 miles away and was approaching her at a fast speed. An aircraft? Hellion Wuxi turned her head abruptly and widened her eyes in surprise. She was only stunned for a moment before her pretty face turned into surprise, excitement, and exhilaration. At the same time, there was a warm current that instantly filled her heart. Because, on the surface of the aircraft, there were a few golden words that were formed by mysterious runes. Xiao Wu, brother is here to pick you up. Beep, beep, beep. The aircraft arrived in front of Hellion Wuxi in an instant. Beep, beep, beep sounded and the door opened directly. Mistress Xiao Wu, we are here to pick you up under Master's orders. Hellion Wuxi originally thought that she could see Chen Hao. After all, she heard that Chen Hao had a miniature aircraft. In addition, there was a heartwarming sentence on the aircraft. She was even more certain that it was Chen Hao. However, after opening the door, what appeared was a miniature version of the ancient mythical beast, Black Tortoise. Fortunately, Hellion Wuxi knew that Chen Hao had the 5 mythical beasts. Where is he? Hellion Wuxi asked. Master is training. Because the laws of space here are too strong, Master did not come to pick you up personally. Mistress Xiao Wu, come on up. We will set off immediately to meet Master. Mistress Yu Yu, Mistress Xiao Lian, Mistress Huan Huan, Mistress Lele, and the 2 masters should have already received you. You are the furthest away. Oh, where are they? How long will it take us to get there? Hellion Wuxi asked after entering the aircraft. Beep, beep, beep. Master, it is estimated that we will arrive in about 3 years and 2 months. My name is Moonlight. From now on, I will be Master's aircraft. Moonlight. Hellion Wuxi heard the voice transmitted from the aircraft's AI and was slightly startled. Soon after, A blush appeared on her little face that was as cold as the moon. 3 years, with your speed, isn't that very far? It took us 9 years to find you, Master. When we return, we can be 3 times faster if the destination is more specific. However, Master need not worry. The laws of time here are about 140 times that of the outside world. We will have to spend about 700 to 1040 years here. This is just the beginning. Ah! Helian Wuxi's eyes widened in surprise. Master, this is the introduction of my functions. If Master needs anything, just let me know. The aura of the outside world has been connected. Master's cultivation here will not be affected in the slightest. Okay. Helian Wuxi looked at the screen that appeared in front of her with a little excitement. It was also at this moment that the aircraft directly turned into a stream of light and disappeared into the void. Chapter 680. In the endless void, there was a group of palaces with a radius of only 1,000,000 miles. They were shrouded in a thick 7-colored glow. From afar, they looked like celestial palaces that were suspended in the 9 heavens. Hundreds of thousands of miles away, Chen Hao, Chen Shui, and Long Ting were approaching at an astonishing speed. The aura is getting stronger. Brother Hao, this should be a good treasure land, right? Long Ting asked excitedly as she sensed the increasingly strong ancient aura and coercion. At this moment, the aura of the 3 of them was obviously much stronger than before they entered the primitive secret area. However, their cultivation levels were still at the peak of the Earth's celestial stage. Moreover, Chen Hao still had not reached the state of, I am heaven and earth, and I am heaven and earth. It should be. This time, we might have to stay here for a while. Yes, Mother and Xiao Wu should be coming back soon. However, I'm afraid we'll meet other cultivators here. Chen Shui said. In the past 12 years, when Chen Hao began to refine the aircraft, Xiaoji No. 1 had set off to pick up Celestial Venerable Han Mei and Celestial Venerable Yun Wei. The distance between the 2 of them was about the same as Helian Wuxi's. Moreover, they were in the same legion. Chen Hao considered that the 2 of them were the weakest and did not have the protection of the Divine Temple's disciple, so they might be in danger. Therefore, he asked Xiaoji to pick them up first. Chen Hao, on the other hand, had spent a year refining the aircraft. In addition, the 3 of them were traveling by air. Therefore, they did not have much of an advantage compared to other cultivators. In the beginning, they had traveled on the aircraft for nearly 2 months in search of rich and high-grade star fragments, which had widened the gap between them and other cultivators. Because of this, if the 3 of them stayed for a long time in the place where the aura was so strong, it was obvious that it was a treasure land. Other cultivators might rush over. It doesn't matter. The closer we get to the core, the more cultivators there will be. It doesn't make a difference whether we meet them earlier or later. Moreover, the cultivators we meet now will definitely be from our legion. Why should we be afraid of them? Chen Hao said. This was something that they would have to face sooner or later. If they wanted to make a fortune in secret, they would have to wait for the aircraft to return and go straight in. However, even if that was the case, everything would still be exposed in the end. This was inevitable. After all the cultivators in the primitive mystic realm were like moving towards the core of the sphere. They would eventually gather at the core. Furthermore, during the process, the treasured lands that appeared would also attract the nearby cultivators to gather. That was because the aura of the treasured lands could be felt from hundreds of millions of miles away, especially when the restrictions left behind in the treasure grounds were activated. Once a treasure was born, it would cause the heavens and earth to shake and affect an incomparably large area. Moreover, the more powerful the treasure was, the greater the fluctuation it caused. It was the same for relics and inheritances. In other words, in this place, unless one had an absolute advantage in distance, causing the other party to be unable to reach in time even after sensing one's aura, one would have to face the competition of many cultivators. I'm not afraid, but, okay, Xiao Shui, don't worry. We haven't even broken through to the peak of the initial stage of the Earth's celestial stage. The others won't be much stronger than us. Those at the peak of the later stage of the Earth's celestial stage need more improvement. At least, in this environment, within 100 years, I don't think anyone can or dare to trigger the divine punishment to become a celestial, Xianxia said. They had discussed this a long time ago. Although the primal mystic realm was no longer a real universe, but a remnant of a universe that had collapsed, the three of them had discovered that the laws of heaven were extremely complete. The reason was simple, because they had encountered new life. It was definitely not a life that had survived from the ancient times before the collapse of the universe. This meant that one could definitely trigger the divine punishment in this place. Moreover, it was a divine punishment that belonged to the ancient universe. How strong would it be? Based on the fact that Xianxia was unable to reach the peak of the initial stage of the Earth's celestial stage, it showed how high the requirements of the ancient universe for cultivators of the same stage were. To put it bluntly, the cultivators of the vast universe galaxy had to increase their strength by at least 3 to 5 times to trigger the divine punishment of the same level. The distance of hundreds of thousands of miles was getting closer and closer as they talked. However, as they got closer, the pressure from the ancient times became more and more terrifying. This forced the three of them to slow down, especially Xianxia and Longtime. However, there was a trace of excitement in the eyes of the three of them. The ruins of an ancient sect. Haha. This is the most powerful treasure land we have encountered. No wonder the aura is so strong. Little Xue, follow me. Sister Ting, your body is strong. Follow little Xue. Let's break in together. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. The three of them suddenly raised their auras to the limit and rushed toward the restrictive spell formed by the 7 colored rays. This restrictive spell was naturally a broken restrictive spell that had existed for hundreds of millions of years. Even so, the mysterious and terrifying pressure that it emitted at this moment was extremely powerful. One could imagine how terrifying it had been in the past, as it had been able to protect this ancient sect from the collapse of the universe and still exert its power until now. What a mysterious restrictive spell! Xianxia, who was in the lead, was shocked when he came into contact with the 7 colored rays. Originally, Xianxia wanted to break it by force. However, when he sensed the mysterious rune formation, Xianxia was a little reluctant to do so. This protective restrictive spell must have been formed by the top powerful figures of this ancient sect. It is definitely the most powerful protective restrictive spell of this sect. If I was in my peak state, I would naturally not be able to comprehend it. However, it can be said that it has been disrupted and broken down by the collapse of the universe. This is definitely the best opportunity to comprehend it. No, I can't waste it. Xianxia thought to himself. Thinking of this, he looked back at the 2 women who were looking at him with a little surprise and said, "Let's try to decipher and comprehend this restrictive spell. How about it? Anyway, we have plenty of time. We can comprehend as much as we can. If we really can't comprehend it, we can break it by force." "Okay," Xianxia replied. "Then you too can comprehend it. After you break it, just bring me in. I will help them refine the Nirvana elixir in advance as a greeting gift." Ha! Longtime looked at Xianxia ambiguously and laughed. Even now, this girl's character was still hard to change. If she could be lazy, she would definitely be lazy. If she could sleep, she would definitely sleep. If she could take a bath, she would definitely take a bath. This was definitely a rather high level of calmness. If the cultivators outside who wanted to enter but could not enter the primitive mystic realm knew about this, they would definitely vomit blood from anger. This was the primitive mystic realm. How could they waste time like this? Do I have enough essence blood? However, Xianxia was already used to it. When he heard Longtime say this, he directly asked. In this place, they would definitely have to stay for more than 700 years or even 1,000 years. Xianxia did not dare to be sure of other things. However, with the Nirvana elixir, Xianxia was absolutely sure that these girls, no matter who they were, would not be able to escape from his evil claws. Just thinking about it made him a little excited. However, the time laws here had increased by about 140 times. It seemed that Longtime, Xianxia, and himself who had already taken the Nirvana elixir, took a lot longer to break out. Just like their cultivation level and strength, there was a certain connection. The energy required to condense the mysterious runes of the Nirvana elixir had also increased by several times. Because of this, the time it took to break out was also several times longer. It had already been 12 years. He, Longtime, and Xianxia were the same. Fortunately, Chen Hao could feel that the throbbing hidden in his body was becoming stronger and stronger. It seemed that in another 10 years, it would break out. With his calmness, how could they compare? Therefore, no matter what, in hundreds of years, Chen Hao believed that none of the girls would be able to withstand the effects of the Nirvana elixir. All of them had to be taken care of by him. The only regret was that there was only one saint-grade Nirvana elixir. It was not something that Longtime could refine. Similarly, even if there was old God, Chen Hao, who was restricted by his cultivation level, also could not refine it. That's why I want it from you, Longtime said. Chen Hao directly forced out a blood arrow and handed it to Longtime. Xianxia glared at Chen Hao and Longtime. How could she not see that there was a trace of arousal on Chen Hao's face? Little Xue, why didn't you break out even once? Let me see what you look like when you break out. In your dreams, I won't let you see it even if I break out. All right, let's begin to comprehend. Come, little Xue, let's try to comprehend with one another. Chen Hao did not care about Longtime's presence in the slightest. He grabbed Longtime's slender waist and stepped into the seven-colored light. Tens of billions of meters away from the ancient sect ruins where Chen Hao and the other two were, two figures sensed the aura in the void and moved forward quickly. Brother Chen Lin, I'm a little tired. Why are you tired again? Oh, how about this? You take a rest and I'll go first. The primitive secret realm is unimaginably large. This is an opportunity for us. We have to go deep as fast as possible. It's only worth stopping when we encounter a truly valuable place. You just need to sense the direction of the strong aura and follow me. Anyway, there are no practitioners now. For a long time, we won't encounter any foreign tribes, so there won't be any danger. Chen Lin held Donglio's hand and said with a slight frown. Oh. Donglio's face flashed with a trace of sadness and disappointment as he replied in a low voice. Dong, don't think too much. I'm just trying to get a bigger harvest. This is a rare opportunity. My harvest is your harvest, isn't it? You just need to sense the aura and you'll be sure to follow my route. If there's a valuable place ahead, I'll stop and you can catch up with me then. Well, I understand. I'm dragging you down. Go ahead, Dong Lu said. Although Chen Lin could see that the flowing eastward current was a little sad, now was not the time to be sentimental. In this unimaginably huge space, at least for a long time, the harvest of experience alone would definitely be greater. Winning time was winning opportunities. As a top master second only to the 20 corps commanders, deputy corps commanders, and a few division commanders, he could win some opportunities with his speed advantage. Dong Lu, who was only at the peak of the initial stage of the Earth's celestial stage, was obviously a burden to him at this moment. He really liked Dong Lu, who was well-behaved and admired him, but in the face of great benefits, he still had to make a choice. After all, he was telling the truth. Dong Lu was really not dangerous. He had endured for a long time. Now that he said it, he naturally would not have any scruples and left quickly. He believed that even if Dong Lu was unhappy, they would not really blame him. But what Chen Lin did not expect was that women treated feelings with great care, especially Dong Lu, who was a girl who was in love for the first time. It was not something a man could imagine. Looking at Chen Lin disappearing in front of her without looking back, Dong Lu bit her lips tightly, and her eyes were instantly filled with tears of grievance. So what if he was telling the truth? So what if she was not in danger? Putting herself in his shoes, if her cultivation was higher than his, would she leave him in order to get a greater harvest? But he left her behind. Although he said it nicely, Dong Lu knew and believed that if he could give up on her at this time, when he encountered greater benefits in the future, he could give up on her. Taking a deep breath, Dong Lu felt that she had grown a lot in an instant. She also saw some things that were originally wishful thinking. It was a vision of perfection, but the reality was incomplete. Fortunately, it was not too late. Although she was very close to him and was only one step away, this step was the key, wasn't it? She still had the body of primordial Yin. She could still find someone more suitable for her, even if they were not as talented as him. As long as they were on par with her and treated her sincerely, they would be better than him. After staying in the void and recovering for a full 4 hours, the flowing east current did not follow Lin's footsteps straight ahead. Instead, it deviated and went to the left. Hiss, it's like this. No, it should be like this. Well, you're right. Are you convinced? I'm just a little slower than you. After trying that step, I naturally know that your step is right. Little Shui, I find that your face is as thick as little sister Ting's. Now we've encountered at least 1,000 levels, right? Every time, I'm right, right? If you tried all these 1,000 levels, how big is the gap between you and me now? You're as thick-skinned as little Ting. How big is the gap? At most 10 minutes? 10 minutes? You're talking about the time outside, right? What's wrong with the time outside? Chen Shui said stubbornly. All right. One day, there will be one thing that this big brother will make you obedient. Chen Hao said as if he was referring to something. Let's continue. The two's minds were intertwined, and the communication became a spiritual communication. Naturally, Long Ting, who was in the middle of the battle, did not know. Otherwise, she would have flipped out. How was he thick-skinned? However, even though Chen Shui refused to admit defeat verbally, she couldn't help but admire Chen Hao's valiant and abnormal comprehension ability in her heart. Comprehending together like this allowed her to gain extremely great gains, and she clearly felt that she'd become much smarter. Chapter 681. 10 days. Done. This. Along with Chen Hao's voice, the 7-colored barrier suddenly split apart to form a circular door of light with a diameter of 2 meters. At the same time, a dense ancient aura surged out as if it was material. Little Sister Ting, come over quickly. Long Ting, who'd finished the 5 rebirth pills and 2 rebirth pills, instantly charged over to Chen Hao's side, and then the 3 of them flashed before the door of light vanished. Dense and pure spirit energy of the heavens and the earth, quintessence energy, and an ancient aura that had been nurtured for a myriad of years accompanied by waves of refreshing fragrance assaulted their faces, but, with a glance, it was a scene of ruins and desolation. Amongst the numerous groups of palaces that stood in great numbers, only a few remained intact while most were damaged and collapsed. The ground was even covered in ravines and was in a complete mess. Even though a myriad of years had passed, Chen Hao and Chen Shui were still able to sense the aura of destruction in the entire space that still hadn't dispersed completely. But even then, it was unable to conceal the former glory and strength of the sect. Over there. Follow me. After sighing with emotion for a short period of time, Chen Hao directly transformed into a flowing light and took the lead to head towards the direction the fragrance drifted from. Chen Shui and Long Ting quickly followed behind him. Before the collapse of the universe, the ruins of the sect were an enormous planet, yet only the core of the planet remained. Such a distance didn't require much time at all for Chen Hao's group of 3, and they were able to make a few round trips. After a short moment, a luxuriant and verdant herb garden that was 25,000 kilometers in length and width appeared before the 3 of them, and it formed a sharp contrast with the surrounding dilapidated and desolated scene. It was full of vitality, overflowing with the feeling of spring, and waves of refreshing fragrance that even refreshed the heart. How fragrant! This ought to be the herb garden of the sect, right? Said Long Ting. In a formidable sect, besides the treasure vault that stored spirit herbs and spirit items of the heavens and the earth, herb gardens were the most precious. If spirit herbs and spirit items of the heavens and the earth were compared to fishes, then herb gardens were fishes. They were the most precious spirit trees that were capable of growing spirit herbs and spirit fruits. It could be said that the level of the herb garden was able to determine the resources of a sect to a great extent. It's a pity that the spirit trees here were all destroyed when the universe collapsed. Chen Hao said with a hint of excitement in his eyes as he sensed the lush flowers, grass, and spirit tree saplings in front of him. Then what are we doing here? Chen Shui said. That's right. These flowers and plants are clearly the remnants of the medicinal properties and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. They're of no use to us, right? Longting said. Really? Come, I'll give you something to eat? Chen Hao didn't explain. Instead, he smiled mysteriously, and 2 spirit fruits that could be called small watermelons appeared between his eyebrows. What a majestic and pure life force. Pan fruit? How can it contain such terrifying vitality? Longting could absolutely be called a glutton, and her knowledge in the aspect of spirit fruits was absolutely in existence that instantly surpassed Chen Hao and Chen Shui. She recognized the spirit fruit Chen Hao took out with a single glance, and then she received it from Chen Hao. Crunch. She bit off a large piece with her small mouth, and then she said, an ordinary cultivator that eats this immortal fruit would surely be able to increase their lifespan by 1,000 years. Their body, vitality, essence, energy, and spirit would all obtain an extremely great improvement. Is this really the mutated pan fruit from back then? Chen Shui said with surprise. When I first obtained it, it was only a small toy that could increase my lifespan by a few years, and celestial venerables wouldn't even spare it a glance. But now? Chen Hao said. You mean, these flowers and plants before us can be cultivated? Chen Shui seemed to be lost in thought. Smart. Even though these flowers and plants look like weeds and aren't spirit trees or spirit herbs at all. But Sister Ting said just now that they were bred from the precious spirit trees and spirit herbs in the herb garden back then. Ordinary people are indeed unable to cultivate them, but it's different for me. Alright, let's get to work. Don't damage their roots, and collect them completely first. Great. We can eat ancient spirit fruits in the future, Long Ting was especially excited as she spoke. The easiest method was undoubtedly to directly collect the entire herb garden. Unfortunately, Chen Hao and the others didn't have the ability to do so. Secondly, even though the space in Chen Hao's mind had already exceeded a radius of 50,000 miles, it was still too small, and it would take up too much space if the entire herb garden was placed in his mind. Thirdly, these flowers and plants had to be nourished by top-grade spirit spring water, so there was no need for them to be connected to the soil. The 3 of them collected for a total of 8 days before they finished, turning the entire herb garden into a barren land and wiping out the only vitality of the sect ruins. Little Shui, Sister Ting, leave the treasure hunting to me. You 2 split up and search for opportunities to see if you can obtain any inheritance. Chen Hao said to Long Ting and Chen Shui after collecting the last few flowers and plants into his mind. What about you? I'm not very interested. You 2 go first. Brother Hao, you don't have to give in to us like this. Whoever can obtain it will obtain it. Alright, just go. I'll first collect all the valuable things around us. Chen Hao said. Oh, it was certain that there would definitely be magic treasures and secret manuals in ancient sect ruins, and the chances of having an inheritance of opportunity were very high. Whether one could obtain it or not depended on one's strength and luck. This was because when they resisted the collapse of the universe back then, they must have condensed the strongest restriction. Moreover, if there was an inheritance of opportunity left behind, they would definitely have to fulfill certain conditions to obtain it. This was the common characteristic of any inheritance of opportunity, and there was no exception here. Now, Chen Hao and the other 2 had won the initiative. They did not dare to say that there were no restrictions, but at least there was absolutely no problem obtaining things with their strength. Rumble. Under the guidance of the treasure-hunting sword spirit, Chen Hao searched the dilapidated palace, the ravines, and the piles of tiles that had been piled up into piles. He plucked everything that came his way. Master, there are too many low-grade spirit treasures. There's nothing good. These are all ancient spirit treasures. Even low-grade spirit treasures would cause a commotion if they were taken out. However, old god, treasure hunter, these weapons and equipment should have been left behind by the cultivators who died back then. How come there's not a single storage treasure? Chen Hao asked. It's impossible for storage treasures to be left behind. When the universe collapsed, it mainly destroyed space and life. The independent space laws contained in storage treasures could not be preserved at all, even if it was a divine weapon. Old God said, "What a pity. Master, there's one more thing. I think you should break the protective barrier of this sect." Break it? But if you don't break it, whether it's you or the two of them, it's unlikely that you'll obtain the inheritance of opportunity. This is because any inheritance of opportunity is a remnant of the original expert's will. In fact, it's used to select the inheritor. On the other hand, the three of you broke the barrier and entered without activating the inheritance. Similarly, all you found was trash. Only by forcefully breaking the barrier and causing a commotion in the world and attracting all the cultivators in the surroundings would you be able to activate the inheritance. Old God, you're wrong, right? If we can break the formation and come in, why can't the inheritors will sense it? This is more difficult than breaking it by force. This means that we're stronger. That's the theory, but isn't there no aura? Therefore, I'm sure that this barrier doesn't have the inheritors will left behind. Or rather, there's no inheritance here at all. There's another possibility, which is that the three of you don't meet the requirements of an inheritor. In short, it's still possible to break the restriction and try. Chen Hao pondered for a moment and said, "All right, according to Xiaoji's calculations, they should be able to arrive within a month at the earliest. If we don't break it, I'm afraid they won't be able to sense it." Boom. 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 Before Chen Hao and Old God could finish their conversation, a terrifying explosion suddenly came from the void. Immediately, the entire seven-colored barrier seemed to have a chain reaction and exploded with a rumble. At this moment, only the sect ruins with a radius of 1 million miles directly set off violent fluctuations. Someone's coming. Chen Shui and Long Ting, who had split into two groups and were shuttling through the palace complex to search, flew into the air and looked in the direction of the fluctuations. Unfortunately, the distance was too far. Even their senses could not sense it, let alone their eyes. Chen Shui, who had the strongest perception, could only sense it at 150,000 miles. "Let's go take a look." The two of them rushed toward the source of the fluctuations at the same time. Although they could not sense it, they could cover a distance of 1 million miles in minutes. Moreover, the two of them knew that Chen Hao would definitely go and take a look. Naturally, they had to meet up with him first. This was because the terrifying fluctuations of heaven and earth had already erupted. The extremely thick ancient aura and origin energy sealed in the barrier had already spread in all directions. Someone's coming? It must be an expert. Let's go and take a look. Chen Hao also rushed over at the first moment. Originally, he had used the aircraft for a period of time. Although it was not a long time, the distance advantage could still be maintained for 10 to 20 years. Those who were able to arrive at this time must be very fast and did not stay in the middle of the star fragment or other small places. Chen Lin, who was flying quickly toward the depths, suddenly paused and turned his head to look behind him. What a strong fluctuation of heaven and earth. It must be the birth of a precious treasure or a relic inheritance. Very good. Chen Lin did not hesitate too much. He directly turned into a stream of light and flew toward the direction of the fluctuations of heaven and earth. At this time, he did not even think about what he had told the Pandong Lu. He just went straight to the place where the aura was strong. However, what he did not expect was that it was the Pandong Lu, who did not follow him, who caused the fluctuations of heaven and earth. Chapter 682. The cultivators within tens of billions of kilometers of the sect ruins all felt the aura of the turbulent heaven and earth. However, although the cultivators within hundreds of billions of kilometers sensed it, they gave up after flying for a few hours. This was because the fluctuation of heaven and earth had become very weak. They had traveled hundreds of millions of kilometers in the direction of the fluctuation, but it had not strengthened at all. It could only mean that it was too far away. By the time they arrived, it would be too late. If it were in the outside world, no matter how far it was, they would definitely rush over. However, this was the primitive secret realm. As they continued to go deeper, they might encounter their own opportunities at any time. There was no need to travel a long distance. In the end, they might end up with nothing and waste time. It's her? Chen Hao, who had integrated into all things in the world, had already stopped Longtime and Xianxia with his powerful perception. The three of them took the lead to gather together. Isn't she with Chen Lin? Why is she alone? Who is it? Longtime asked when she heard Chen Hao and Xianxia. At this moment, the three of them were 100,000 kilometers away from the source of the fluctuation. Chen Hao and Xianxia could sense it, but Longtime could not. Pandong current. She and Chen Lin were on the same aircraft as you. If they went straight in, they shouldn't have come to us. There should be a deviation of at least a few billion kilometers. We didn't break the restriction, so it's unlikely that they changed direction and came here directly, Chen Hao said. According to the distance before they came in, Chen Hao inferred that unless the Pandong current changed their direction, it was impossible for them to come here. After all, they had not caused the turbulence of heaven and earth before. Moreover, the speed of the Pandong current did not seem to be so fast. But sure enough, there's movement. Chen Hao had just finished talking to the two girls when a mysterious fluctuation and a low roar came from the depths of the violently shaking palace complex. The three of them turned their heads to look at the depths at the same time. Chen Shui and Longtime had tried many of the palaces in the core, whether they were broken or intact, but when they went in, they did not find any mystery. Let's go, there's no need to hide. Chi. Chen Hao and the other two suddenly turned into 3 streams of light and rushed to the core of the palaces at an amazing speed. Because of the discovery of the ancient sect's ruins, flowing east current's mood became better. He had just broken the restriction and entered the sect's ruins. He was excitedly releasing his mind to sense the rich ancient aura and origin energy. However, at this moment, 3 energy fluctuations suddenly appeared in the distance and appeared in his senses. However, limited by the range of her perception, she could only sense the vibrations of the energy of heaven and earth. She could not sense who the other party was. Cultivators have come in so quickly? The energy around flowing east suddenly soared, and he also rushed to the core of the dilapidated palaces. She was the one who opened the sect ruins, so there was no reason for others to snatch it first. Just based on the mysterious fluctuations coming from the core, she was sure that a treasure had appeared, or even an inheritance. Buzz. Buzz buzz buzz. Rumble rumble. Rumble rumble. Chen Hao and the other two and flowing east current had only flown for less than 100,000 li when the originally faint mysterious buzzing became more and more intense. What made the 4 of them stop at the same time was that the palaces in the core of hundreds of thousands of li, whether they were dilapidated or intact, suddenly blossomed with mysterious 7-colored rays of light. They rose from the ground as if they were alive, rumbling and moving. The faint mysterious aura suddenly became several times stronger at this moment. 7-colored barriers were born, like a set of 7-colored bubbles, wrapping thousands of palaces in the core. Inheritance. At this time, Chen Hao and the other two and flowing east current on the other side confirmed a fact. At this moment, the flowing east current had already approached and saw Chen Hao and the other two. The extraordinarily handsome Chen Hao stood in the middle. Chen Lin said that he wanted to use them, but the flowing east current had already believed that Chen Lin had designs on them. Longtime and Chen Xiaobai, who possessed abnormal magical powers, stood on either side of Chen Hao. Flowing east current looked at them in a daze. She tightly pursed her lips, and her eyes revealed a trace of envy and grievance. Especially when she saw the 3 of them rushing to the 7-colored barrier together, she felt even more sad. Wasn't that the immortal couple she yearned for? But Chen Lin, flowing east current, knew that he must have discovered her. At this moment, if Chen Hao and the other two wanted to drive her away, she had no choice. No matter who it was, she was not their opponent. In this primitive secret realm, It was not up to whoever discovered and opened the inheritance restriction first. Everything depended on strength. It belonged to whoever could snatch it. Even if they were from the same clan, the same teacher, and knew each other, if she wanted to snatch it, they could kill her. But the three of them did not stop her, obviously giving her a fair chance to compete. Whoever could get it would depend on their luck. Taking a deep breath, flowing east current also rushed directly to the seven-colored restriction. Boom! The moment she stepped into the restriction, flowing east current's mind shook, and endless pressure and mystery exploded in her mind. Break for me. Break. Break. Chen Hao, Chen Shui, and Long Ting, when separated by a distance of 3,000 feet, launched extremely powerful attacks at the same time. Two sword lights filled with endless destructive aura, and a golden fist condensed with terrifying power violently attacked the seven-colored restriction. Rumble, a distant explosion sounded, and a huge crack suddenly appeared on the first layer of the seven-colored barrier. However, just as Chen Hao and the other two were about to rush in, the second layer of the barrier suddenly flashed with seven-colored ripples, and instantly repaired the first layer of the barrier. This is actually so strong? Chen Hao was a little surprised. The blow just now, whether it was him, Chen Shui, or Long Ting, they had all used 90% of their strength, and it was indeed broken. But the recovery ability of the inheritance restriction was too fast and amazing. Brother Hao, little Shui, don't you feel it? Long Ting clenched her fist, looked at her fist strangely, and turned to the two and said, "Feel what? Is it because I'm attacking with my physical body? Try not to use a sword." Long Ting said. Both Chen Hao and Chen Shui were slightly puzzled, but without hesitation, they punched the barrier at the same time. Chen Hao and Chen Shui's violent punches directly broke the barrier again, and immediately there was a flash of realization in their eyes. It's actually an absolute art inheritance. At this time, the two also understood what was going on. The simplest attack, which was formed from his physical body, spirit, and true essence, was actually able to break through the first barrier, and an obscure incantation flowed into his mind. After the three of them compared, they were exactly the same and had the same sentence. Moreover, the three of them were as clear as a mirror. They knew that only by comprehending the first sentence could they obtain the second sentence through the attack. There was no doubt that if they wanted to break the layers of the seven-colored barrier, they had to comprehend the absolute art contained in the barrier step by step. Otherwise, with their strength, they would definitely not be able to break it by force. Flowing eastward, who was also attacking the barrier, was originally shocked by the terrifying recovery ability of the barrier and did not know what to do. However, when she saw Chen Hao and Chen Xiaobai attacking with their fists, although she did not understand, she also felt strange and tried to attack with her physical strength. She also instantly understood what was going on. When the four of them were immersed in comprehending the absolute art of the barrier, within tens of billions of miles away from the sect ruins, they could clearly feel the increase in the aura, and they were all approaching at the fastest speed. If an expert in the Earth's celestial stage flew at full speed, he could basically reach 100 million miles in more than 2 hours. At the slowest, he could fly 50 million miles in 2 hours. For an expert like Chen Lin, if he flew at full speed, he could definitely reach 150 million miles in 2 hours. However, even the nearest cultivator was close to 10 billion miles away, and it would still take a few days for him to arrive. Bang! Rumble! In less than half an hour, Chen Hao, who was immersed in comprehension, suddenly stood up and launched a second punch. The fist shadows were heavy and bloomed with a ray of seven-colored light. Obviously, Chen Hao's fist intent had integrated the mystery of the first magic art. So fast! Flowing East sensed the movement on Chen Hao's side and was surprised. However, Chen Shui and Long Ting did not feel anything. The two of them had long been accustomed to Chen Hao's abnormal comprehension ability. It was quite rare for Chen Hao to comprehend a magic art in half an hour. It could only mean that the inheritance of this absolute art was very mysterious. Nearly 2 hours later, Chen Shui launched the second punch, but at this time, Chen Hao had already launched the third punch. Almost only 1 or 2 minutes slower than Chen Shui, Flowing East launched the second punch. This made Flowing East slightly proud. Although she was far inferior to Chen Hao, she was not inferior to Chen Xiaobai. After all, Chen Xiaobai started a little earlier than her. The most important thing was that she was stronger than Long Ting. Anyway, at this moment, she had seen Chen Lin's true colors. She already knew that Chen Lin valued and liked Long Ting, not her. She was stronger than Long Ting, so naturally she would be proud. Although it was meaningless, she would not have a deep relationship with Chen Lin. In particular, after another hour, when Long Ting still did not launch the second punch, she was convinced that her comprehension ability was definitely stronger than Long Ting's. Even Chen Shui did not expect Long Ting's comprehension ability to be so bad. She only knew that Long Ting was extraordinarily lazy and extraordinarily thick-skinned. However, Long Ting's strength was even stronger than hers. No matter what, she was still a top genius. Even if her cultivation technique was special, her comprehension ability would definitely not be bad. But why hadn't she comprehended the first magic art after so long? However, none of them, including Chen Hao, who were immersed in their comprehension, knew that Long Ting, who seemed to be in a state of comprehension, was currently emitting a light sound of deep sleep from her nostrils. In this case, when Chen Hao finally comprehended the third magic art in the 4th hour, which was getting harder and harder to comprehend, and was ready to attack again, he finally found Long Ting's abnormality. Chen Hao almost fell to the ground. Chapter 683. Slept. Brother Hao, what are you doing? When Chen Hao slapped Long Ting's little butt, Long Ting suddenly woke up and glared at Chen Hao. You're not comprehending it? I'm not interested in this lost art. I don't know how many paths there are to comprehend at the first barrier, and there are many more barriers behind. It will be difficult to succeed without 8 to 10 years. You guys can just comprehend it. Long Ting said, if you don't comprehend it, you won't be able to enter. Although this is an inherited lost art, it's only an assessment of the true inheritance. The inside of the palace is the real deal. Hurry up and comprehend it. Brother Hao, teach me what you've comprehended first so that I don't have to waste any more effort. No. Comprehend it yourself. Comprehend as much as you can. If you can't enter, then stay outside by yourself. I'll go in with little Shui. Chen Hao said speechlessly. The process of comprehension was also a process of cultivation. It was indeed possible to impart it directly, but it was meaningless to do so. In fact, even if Long Ting didn't say anything, Chen Hao would directly impart it to her and Chen Shui after comprehending it. But at this moment, hearing Long Ting's words, Chen Hao directly refused. This girl was really too lazy. Okay. Long Ting was forced to agree. She slowly got up and casually punched, but, chi-chi, bang, a 7-colored light flashed. Long Ting had unknowingly comprehended the first technique she had obtained. However, Chen Hao didn't care. Perhaps Long Ting began to sleep after comprehending the first technique. But, in less than a quarter of an hour, Long Ting actually punched again. This speed was half the time Chen Hao used to comprehend the second technique. This time, Chen Hao, Chen Shui, and the distant Flowing East were all shocked. But the most shocking thing was still behind. The further Chen Hao and the other two went, the slower their speed became. However, Long Ting was unstoppable and became faster and faster. Brother Hao, little Shui, I comprehended it again. It's so simple. Why you guys so slow? I've finished comprehending the first barrier. The 9 incantations can be combined into one ultimate skill. Brother Hao, Xiao Shui, I'll pass it to you. Ahem. That's a good idea. Little sister Ting, I didn't expect you to be so powerful. Not bad, not bad. It's just so. I didn't think it would be so simple. Although there are some differences, they are mostly the same. Long Ting said proudly. You mean, you've comprehended something similar? Chen Hao asked. That's right. This set of unique skills is basically to strengthen the physical body. It doesn't have much effect on me. Do you really think I'm that lazy? Pa. Two golden lights suddenly shot out from between Long Ting's eyebrows and merged into Qin Hao and Qin Shui's eyebrows. This was the combination of the 9 techniques that Long Ting had comprehended and directly poured them into the two's heads. I'll go in first. Long Ting punched out. A resplendent 7-colored light with boundless profoundness appeared. She became one with her fist. With a swoosh, she pierced through the first barrier and disappeared before Chen Hao and Qin Shui. This girl? It seems that this is her luck. Xiao Shui, let's quickly comprehend and go in to have a look. With Long Ting's enlightenment, the two only took more than 10 minutes to punch out one after another and immediately disappeared outside. The Flowing East sect watched anxiously, but there was nothing they could do. They could only comprehend wholeheartedly. After all, even if they practiced this kind of unique skill, they could still benefit a lot. Besides, there were so many barriers, so there was no reason to give up now. Moreover, since this barrier contained a unique skill that everyone could comprehend, maybe there was more than one inheritance in the palace. It's the remains of an ancient sect. Great, I shouldn't be too late. A few days later, a cultivator was the first to arrive at the place where the heavens and earth were shaking. From afar, this cultivator was already excited when he sensed the strong ancient aura and origin energy. When he saw the dilapidated palaces and the 7-colored light shining in the center, he became even more excited. Flowing East? When the arriving cultivators approached the 7-colored barrier, they saw Flowing East flow sitting cross-legged in front of the barrier at a glance. Their eyes bloomed with a complicated light. There was surprise, and even more puzzlement. Wasn't she with Chen Lin? How could she be alone? Just as this practitioner approached Paneast Flow with a nervous heart, Paneast Flow also turned to look at him. When he saw who it was, Paneast Flow was slightly startled. Immediately, he jumped up and threw himself into the man's arms as if he had seen the closest person to him. Brother Dongxing. For no reason, seeing the man's concerned eyes, the grievances in her heart directly broke out. She just called out, then hid in the man's arms and cried. Flowing East. The man reached out and wanted to hug the Flowing East, but thinking that the Flowing East had established a relationship with Chen Lin, he stopped abruptly in the air. He wanted to say something, but seeing the sad look of the Flowing East, he didn't say anything for the time being. He just let the other party cry, and he felt a faint uneasiness and pain because of the Flowing East. Brother Dongxing, I'm sorry. After a few minutes, the Flowing East whispered in the man's arms. Flowing East? Who bullied you? No matter who it is, I will get justice for you. Tell me. No one bullied me. Brother Dongxing, do you dislike me? Flowing East, don't get me wrong. How could I dislike you? The man said, and his arms in the air trembled as he hugged the Flowing East. It was like a dream. His name was Fan Dongxing, a member of the Fan family, but he was not a direct descendant of the Fan family, but a descendant of the Fan family's grand elder. To be given a surname by the Fan family, he naturally received the same treatment as the direct descendant of the Fan family. Fan Dongxing grew up with the Flowing East, and they were like childhood sweethearts. Both of them were the top talents of the Fan family. 10 years before the opening of the primitive secret realm, Fan Dongxing's fame in the East Flow City was no less than that of the Flowing East. However, after his divine soul was seriously injured during an adventure, he was directly taken away by his ancestor, the Grand Elder of the Fan family, and did not return for 10 years. When he just left, the Flowing East was indeed sad for a long time, because their relationship, in anyone's opinion, was not as simple as childhood sweethearts. They would definitely become Daoist companions in the future. However, since then, the Flowing East's parents, grandfather and family head, although they did not say it explicitly, had subtly diluted the feelings of the Flowing East toward Fan Dongxing. 10 years later, the Flowing East had almost forgotten about Fan Dongxing, who had disappeared without a trace. When the primitive secret realm arrived, Fan Dongxing suddenly appeared and replaced a disciple of the Fan family who was originally scheduled to enter the primitive secret realm. When the two met again, it was when the Flowing East fell into Chen Lin's arms. At that moment, the flowing east saw the surging emotions in Fan Dongxing's eyes, and the pain that Fan Dongxing forcibly suppressed. At that moment, she was also excited. Unfortunately, time waited for no man. In 10 years, she thought that Fan Dongxing would not come back, and even if he came back, he would be reduced to mediocrity. If he could come back a little earlier, even if it was only for half a year, everything would be different. But at that time, the flowing east had already decided on Chen Lin, and there was no turning back. Chen Lin's appearance, temperament, talent, and cultivation were all very attractive to her. She had no reason to start and then retreat. Tell me, did Chen Lin bully you? Holding Fan Dongxing, who hadn't been in such close contact with him for 10 years, smelling the familiar scent and feeling the person who made him think of her whenever he was free for the past 10 years, Fan Dongxing's eyes flashed with strong killing intent as he asked. Brother Dongxing, I have nothing to do with him. He didn't bully me. I'm sorry, I always thought you would not come back. When I saw you, I deliberately gave you the cold shoulder because I have no way out and I have already, Donglu, don't say it. Brother Dongxing, do you still want me? The flowing east nervously and impulsively asked. Just a moment ago, she had never even thought about it. Even when she decided to leave Chen Lin, she had never thought about returning to Fan Dongxing's embrace. This was because she felt that she was unworthy. Just like that cold-blooded man who had once made her impulsive, Chen Hao, she had never thought about it. As a young girl in love, she needed to find her future Dao companion, but she had already developed to that point with Chen Lin. She knew that in the future, she could only find someone who had never seen her past. But now, when she saw Fan Dongxing, especially when she saw the familiar concern in his eyes, she thought of the scene from 10 years ago when the two of them were inseparable. She could no longer hold back. Even if the entire world abandons you, this brother will always be by your side. Fan Dongxing tightly held the flowing east in his arms, so excited that his body trembled. 10 years had passed. When he returned, he thought he had lost everything. He had impulsively wanted to leave Vast Universe Star several times, and he didn't even want to participate in the primal mystic realm. But every time he thought of flowing east, he couldn't take a single step forward. When he decided to work hard to become stronger, to follow in her footsteps and silently protect her, he was destined to be alone for the rest of his life. She knew what the flowing east meant by already with him, but let alone those intimate moments, even if she took the final step, so what? He wouldn't care. At this moment, Fan Dongxing felt as if he had embraced the entire world, filled with endless joy. Flowing east, you are this brother's one and only. Do you know that at this moment, I am the happiest man in the world? Without you, I would silently live for you. With you, my life has meaning. Tiske, what a good man. That's right, look at him, this is true love. Big brother, how can you be so good to me? You little girl, what are you thinking? I'm just joking, I won't waver, ta. His words are powerful and resonant, and his essence, energy, and soul soar to the heavens. The flowing east is happy, she will be his one and only. What about you, Hao? What left Chen Hao speechless was that even Qin Shui was moved by Fan Dongxing's sincere words, as if they had blended into the world. Her words were even more offensive than Long Ting's. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.